Chapter 23-29. Thud. As he turned around, he heard a dull thud behind him, followed by a pitiful groan. Sword Seeker Pavilion, you are all crazy. There were not many women who could make Suyu fall in love with them, and Princess Chenyu was one of them. Princess Chenyu was furious. Ever since she had arrived in Liuli City, the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion had been looking for trouble like mad dogs. 5 people, including Guang Ming, had already been provoked and injured by the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. It was the same for Princess Chenyu. Because no one wanted to see her, she had wandered around Liuli City alone. She had found a rare spiritual item and was about to buy it when the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion suddenly appeared. The elite who was ranked 4th in the Sword Seeking Pavilion had stepped in and smashed the spiritual item into smithereens. That was fine, but the shop owner had demanded compensation from Princess Chenyu. This was because the shop had been opened by the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion. With Princess Chenyu's temper, how could she take this lying down? She immediately started arguing, and the argument became more and more intense until it turned into a fight. However, she did not consider that the purpose of the other party's provocation was to find a legitimate reason to attack her. In the end, the young man from the Sword Seeker Pavilion attacked with a talisman that he had prepared for a long time, injuring Princess Chenyu on the spot and preventing her from using her 9 divine body. The result was obvious. Princess Chenyu was sent flying by the other party's palm, but she crashed right into Suyu. Suyu did not even turn his head. He casually slapped his palm behind him, using just the right amount of force to dissolve the energy on Princess Chenyu's body. Only then did Princess Chenyu slow down and not crash into Suyu. Then, Suyu grabbed Princess Chenyu with his right arm. Princess Chenyu was being bullied and was extremely grateful to be saved. Looking at the tall, imposing man in front of her, who was covered in lightning, Princess Chenyu felt a little strange. Thank you. Princess Chenyu was slightly embarrassed to be hugged by the man of lightning. Her fair cheeks flushed slightly as she thanked him in a low voice. Suyu was stunned. He did not expect Princess Chenyu to have such an expression. It was the complete opposite of her unruly personality. However, Suyu was stunned for a moment, and Princess Chenyu mistakenly thought that he was looking at her affectionately. Her face turned even redder. Suyu was confused. He put her down expressionlessly and turned to leave. Yo! What a hero saving the damsel in distress, TSK. Unexpectedly, the young man from the Seek Sword Pavilion had a cold expression on his face. But you should find out who I am and whether you deserve to be called a hero. Suyu did not like Princess Chenyu, but he hated the Sword Seeking Pavilion even more. Get lost. If he wanted to provoke him, Suyu would let him have his way. The young man was obviously startled. He hadn't even said anything, but he was already scolded to get lost. At this moment, he felt that he wasn't the one provoking this person, but this person provoking him. Fine, I told you to get lost. The young man's face turned cold, and he threw out a powerful talisman paper. There were 4 beast heads carved on the talisman paper. Each of them was baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Be careful. Don't let the talisman paper touch you. Otherwise, your strength will be sealed, and you will be at the mercy of others. Princess Chenyu reminded. She had suffered a loss just now. However, it was too late for him to warn Suyu. The talisman exploded, and a few beast heads emerged from it, biting Suyu fiercely. Princess Chenyu cried out in alarm, but there was nothing she could do. She could only think to herself, it's over. The young man laughed maniacally. He had already seen Suyu's body bound by the beast heads. He took a step forward, laughing coldly as he attacked Suyu, who was about to be bound. However, the next moment, the young man's soul almost left his body. Suyu did not even move. The lightning fox on the surface of his body flickered, and the 4 powerful beast heads turned into black smoke with a puff. The young man's heart was in turmoil. Those were no ordinary beast heads. They were personally crafted by the Pavilion Master, and they contained the Pavilion Master's unique middle-level domain. Although it was very weak, other than the Bright Palace Master and the Monarch of the Nightless Empire, who else could take it lightly? Who was this Thunder Man in front of him? However, The young man didn't have time to think. He was charging toward Suyu like a meteor. He had thought that Suyu would be bound, so he had used all his strength. Now, he couldn't even hold back his strength. Seeing that there was no way to escape, the young man clenched his teeth, braced himself, and attacked Suyu. Puff, his luck didn't work. Just like the 4 beast heads from before, they didn't even have the chance to struggle before they were destroyed by the mysterious, terrifying thunder. The sword-seeking pavilion's shopkeeper's face turned pale, and he screamed, "You killed Gui Sha." Gui Sha was the 4th-ranked heaven ruler of the sword-seeking pavilion. He was favored by the sword-seeking pavilion. The pavilion master would not let him off easily if he died just like that. Suyu shook off the dust on his body, calmly saying, "You have to be responsible for your word. Did you see me attack? He knocked into me and killed himself. How can you blame me for that?" Shaking his head, Suyu walked away without turning his head back. "Tell your pavilion master that, old man, if he wants revenge, he can come anytime. I will make sure he never returns." Hearing this, the onlookers were in an uproar. He actually dared to challenge the pavilion master of the sword-seeking pavilion? That was one of the 3 great superfighters of the colored glaze civilization. The crowd looked at Suyu's departing figure, shocked beyond word. Princess Chen Yu's eyes glowed. She felt that a man should live like this, fearless and invincible. After Suyu left, he searched around the city and found the Nightless Empire's encampment. The Palace of Light was nearby, and both parties had formed an alliance. Suyu came to a secluded corner, removed his disguise, and walked into a luxurious inn. He had wanted to ask the waiter where the people of the Nightless Empire were, but he heard a familiar voice. Looking to the side, he saw Princess Chen Yu in a private room, excitedly recounting what had happened just now. Even her face was flushed with excitement as she spoke of the impressive part. Xian Hua, Xie Xiaoye, and the Heartless Iron Constable were all present. "Drink some water first." Xie Xiaoye stopped Princess Chen Yu from continuing. In the past hour, Princess Chen Yu had already told her story 3 times. She was tired of hearing it. Xian Hua had a look of doubt, but said, "It's not that I don't believe you, but that Gui Sha's abilities are quite good, second only to mine. You said that he was turned to dust when he collided with the person covered in lightning. That is hard to believe. If that was really the case, how terrifying would the lightning person be?" At this moment, the Heartless Iron Constable looked at Princess Chen Yu, nodding. "I feel that the princess is not lying." She could tell with a glance whether a person was lying or not. But if that was really the case, how terrifying would the lightning person be? Also, Princess Chen Yu lowered her head shyly. "He seems to be interested in me." Suyu, who heard this from outside, felt a chill run down his spine. She could be interested in anyone but Princess Chen Yu. He was outside, typing on his cell phone, so it was very slow. Chapter 23:30. Should he say that Princess Chen Yu thought too highly of herself, or that Suyu was insensitive? In any case, Suyu did not sense any mutual admiration between them. This Princess Chen Yu does not know what's good for her. Suyu had saved her twice. The first time, she had reprimanded Suyu for being a busybody. The second time, Wu Xin had saved him, but she had inexplicably admired him. He had saved her again, but the result was completely different. The reason was that Suyu's strength had not shocked her the first time, but the second time had changed her mind. She had fallen in love with a stranger just because he was powerful. What if this stranger had evil intentions? Suyu's eyes were filled with disappointment. Princess Chen Yu was beyond saving. At that moment, their conversation could be heard in the room again. The Wuxin Iron Constable reminded Princess Chen Yu, "In this world, the one who saves you is not necessarily a good person, and the one who pushes you into the fire pit is not necessarily a bad person." Her words had a double meaning, referring to both the Thunderman and Suyu. Xie Xiaoye added, "The human heart is unpredictable. He merely helped you neutralize a palm strike. Don't take it to heart." Hearing that, Princess Chen Yu was indignant. She thought to herself that the two of them must be envious of her. Yes, everyone looks like a bad person, only Suyu is a good person, right? Princess Chen Yu mocked. Unfortunately, he was struck dead by lightning. I wonder how many good deeds he had done to be struck by lightning. Hearing that, Xie Xiaoye glared at her. Watch your tone. Su Yu's unexpected death had always been a source of grief for Xie Xiaoye. A good person had left just like that. The world was unpredictable. Who could be with whom forever? Princess Chenyue's disrespect made him feel particularly disgusted, and his eyes shone with a cold light. The Wuxin Iron Constable looked at her calmly. As your former teacher, it is better to show some respect. Without him, you would not be where you are now. The Wuxin Iron Constable also felt it was a great pity for Su Yu to leave. Princess Chenyue's words and actions were truly intolerable. My achievements were earned through my own hard work. What does that have to do with him? Princess Chenyu had always been fearless. Now that Su Yu was not around, she was even more unbridled. She pointed to herself. The 9 divine body is something I was born with. It has nothing to do with Su Yu. She was getting more and more out. Xie Xiaoye slammed the table and stood up, scolding angrily, "You ungrateful thing. The body of 9 gods is yours, but without Su Yu taking the risk to train with you all day long, do you think it would have such power today? Hasn't it been a few months? Without his help, has your body of 9 gods improved?" Xie Xiaoye felt deeply sorry for Su Yu. He had put in so much effort, only to receive Princess Chen Yu's complete denial. She finally understood why Su Yu had terminated their teacher-student relationship. It was because Su Yu had seen through Princess Chen Yu's character. Selfish, narrow-minded, and short-sighted, trampling on the help of others, Princess Chen Yu's sore spot had been touched. Indeed, he didn't feel it before. However, after Su Yu left, no one sharpened his 9 divine body, and its power remained at its previous level. But how could she admit this? Don't use such high-sounding words to accuse me. Don't think that I don't know that you and Su Yu have been together for a long time. You are so beautiful. Would he be so kind as to save you from the Palace of Light? I advise you to find another reliable man. Don't hang on to Su Yu, that dead tree. Her unscrupulous, mocking tone finally infuriated Xie Xiaoye. Bang! Xie Xiaoye flipped over the table, her murderous intent swirling. I rarely kill people, but I have no qualms about killing a woman like you. She used to be a pirate. Why would she be afraid of killing a princess? At most, she would return to being a pirate after being hunted down. Princess Chen Yu was not afraid. Who's afraid of you? Her body of 9 gods had been sharpened by Su Yu, and it was no longer what it used to be. She was not afraid of Xie Xiaoye. It had to be said that Princess Chen Yu was heartless. She enjoyed the increase in power that Su Yu had brought, but at the same time, she was critical and looked down on Su Yu. Slap. A resounding slap landed on her face. It was not Xie Xiaoye who had slapped her, but Wuxin Taihu. Her eyes were filled with mild disgust. I rarely hate someone, but you are one of the few. You do not know how to be grateful, and you even speculate about Su Yu with the worst of intentions. A person like you is not worthy of being his student. If Su Yu was really a lustful person, he would have attacked her long ago. But he did not, and even found an excuse to let her go. Would such a person lust after Xie Xiaoye's beauty? Princess Chen Yu was caught off guard by the slap. She covered her left cheek and glared at Wuxin Taihu. How dare you hit me? No one had ever hit her since she was young. Wuxin Taihu calmly said, so what if I hit you? If your father knew, he would only say that I hit you well. Indeed, Wuxin Taihu was a proud lady that the monarch had gone to great lengths to invite to represent the Nightless Empire in the selection of the 8-star civilizations. For this, the monarch often lamented his good luck. How could the monarch dare to blame Wuxin Taihu at such a critical juncture? Princess Chen Yu stared at Wuxin Taihu. You also protect Su Yu. I'm afraid there must be something going on between the two of you, right? Slap. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew past, followed by a sharp and resounding slap on her other right cheek. But the person who had slapped her was not Wuxin Taihu, nor was it Xie Xiaoye. It was Su Yu. Who hit me? Princess Chen Yu screamed in anger. She had already gone mad. To be slapped repeatedly by someone was the greatest humiliation of her life. But when she looked at the person who had slapped her, Her anger froze as if it had encountered an ancient chill. Her expression also froze as she looked at the silver-haired figure in front of her, motionless. Su. Su. Teacher Su. Princess Qian Yu, who had bared her fangs and brandished her claws, was now like a cat, stammering. Su Yu looked at her calmly, his eyes unwavering. Didn't I say that I am no longer your teacher? Princess Qian Yu finally understood. Yes, a year had passed. According to their agreement, Su Yu would only be her teacher for a year. If that was the case, why should she be afraid of him? I slapped you, not for me, but for them. Su Yu did not mind Princess Qian Yu's insults, but he could not ignore her slander of Xie Xiaoye and Wu Xintai Hu. Wu Xintai Hu had slapped Xie Xiaoye. Wu Xintai Hu had slapped Wu Xintai Hu. Princess Qian Yu lowered her head, her eyes filled with hatred. What right did he have to slap me? You are no longer my teacher. Su Yu seemed to be able to read her thoughts. If you are not satisfied, you can look for your father. He waved his sleeves, using a wisp of space energy to throw her out. He then turned around, smiling at the two girls. I have made you worry. The two girls were looking at him in shock and disbelief. They could not believe that Su Yu had appeared in front of them alive. How could he have survived under the Yuanxia realm? Theoretically, if the Yuanxia realm had been dispersed, the entire colored glaze civilization would have been destroyed. All the realms had attacked Su Yu's residence. How could he have escaped unscathed? But Su Yu had indeed appeared in front of them. The two girls came back to their senses, their faces filled with joy. Wu Xintai Hu only smiled lightly, revealing his joy. Compared to her introverted nature, Xie Xiaoye was much more open. She walked forward in surprise and tugged on Su Yu's sleeves, sizing him up from head to toe. Tears of joy formed in his eyes due to the pleasant surprise. This is great, this is great. She was so excited that she could not speak coherently. She did not even know what she was saying. Su Yu patted her shoulder comfortingly. I am back. He sighed in his heart. That sudden calamity seemed to be a good fortune at the moment. Not only did he gain a lot, but he had also verified the attitudes of some people. He did not dare to say the same about others, but Xie Xiaoye was worthy of Su Yu's sincere treatment. Not long after, news of Su Yu's survival spread like wildfire. Swoosh! The monarch was the first to rush over. He stared at Su Yu in disbelief, as if he was looking at a monster. Unbelievable. You're still alive. The monarch was surprised and overjoyed, as if he had just found something he had lost. Su Yu smiled indifferently. I have made you worry. Haha, today is a day worthy of celebration. Come, let me welcome you. The monarch threw a banquet. It was clear that he was in a good mood. Now is not the time to be distracted. The sword-seeking pavilion is so aggressive. Did you and the Palace Master of Light not take any measures? They could not allow the Sleepless Empire and the Palace of Light to remain passive, could they? The monarch's face was solemn. He had heard about Princess Qian Yu being humiliated by Gui Sho on the street. How could he not be angry? Sigh. You may not know, but I, the Palace Master of Light, and the sword-seeking pavilion master reached a consensus when Liuli City was first established. Within Liuli City, we three Dowlords and the Fish Dragon Realm Dowlord are not allowed to fight in Liuli City, lest we become too strong and affect the glazed ancient cave below the city, resulting in irreparable damage. The so-called Fish Dragon Realm should be the Pathmasters of Xia Yian's level. The monarch and the other two were even above the Fish Dragon Realm. Knowing this, Su Yu understood a little. But are the younger generation of our two factions no match for the other party? Su Yu asked. The Palace of Light had Xian Hua, and the Sleepless Empire had the Heartless Iron Arrester, Xie Xiaoye, and the others as representatives. If they joined forces, they should not be suppressed by the sword-seeking pavilion. Hearing this, the monarch sighed deeply. If Liuli City could attack for no reason, how could the sword-seeking pavilion be so arrogant? Su Yu finally understood the real reason. The sword-seeking pavilion was good at using tricks and provocations to attack. Because it was often premeditated, the people from the sword-seeking pavilion who attacked were sure to succeed. On the other hand, the people from the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire disdained using tricks, but those who wanted to use tricks could not defeat the other party. Serves you right to be bullied. Su Yu was unconcerned. The quality of a strategy depended on the person using it. If they were too fixated on reputation and hesitated, then they deserved to be taken advantage of. Chapter 23:31. To settle this once and for all, let me do it, Su Yu said calmly. Instead of being constantly provoked by the Sword Seeker Pavilion and affecting his preparations for the Glaze Ancient Cave, he might as well make a move personally and cause some trouble for the Sword Seeker Pavilion so that they would not have the time to cause trouble again. Moreover, he had already offended the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion, so there was nothing to be afraid of. You want to fight? Xie Xiaoye's eyes shone brightly. Based on her understanding of Su Yu, he would either not attack, or once he did, it would be like a whirlwind sweeping away fallen leaves. It was cruel and heartless. She herself was an excellent example. Su Yu had gotten the entire Pirate Alliance into his hands without making any noise. As the number one person in the Pirate Alliance, she had almost become a prisoner. Do you mind having a fly by your ear? Su Yu asked. Xie Xiaoye giggled. Ha ha ha, the sword-seeking pavilion is in trouble. It was as if she could already see the people from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion being badly battered. However, the monarch and the Wuxin Iron Arrester did not know Su Yu very well. They did not understand where Su Yu's confidence came from, nor did they understand where Xie Xiaoye's gloating expression came from. Spread the news that I came back alive, Su Yu said. He already had a complete plan in mind. Hearing that, Xie Xiaoye creased her brows. She had thought that Su Yu would act in secret. If he announced that he had returned alive, wouldn't that be exposing himself in front of everyone? With the feud between Su Yu and the Sword Seeker Pavilion, the Sword Seeker Pavilion would attack him immediately. Would there be any room for Su Yu to attack? However, she did not question anything. Su Yu must have his own reasons for doing so. However, the monarch tried to persuade him, young Master Su, please don't reveal yourself for the time being. Su Yu had killed the soul of his beloved disciple, Hunting Shadow, right in front of the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master. How could they let such a deep hatred go? Su Yu had been killed by the Heavenly Thunder, and they had no way to pursue the matter. If he knew that Su Yu was still alive, he would definitely kill him. The monarch was a little confused. Su Yu shouldn't be such a reckless person. How could he be so muddle-headed? Thank you for your concern, but I have my own considerations, Su Yu said. The monarch pondered for a while and sighed. All right, be careful. Not only did the Sikh Sword Pavilion have people all over Liuli City, but so did the Nightless Empire. Through the channels of the Sleepless Empire, the news that Su Yu had survived the calamity and returned alive swept through the entire Liuli City. At that moment, in a villa controlled by the Sword-Seeking Pavilion, 7 shadowy figures were sitting around in a dark corner of the villa. Just like how the Palace of Light had its Emissary of Light, and the Nightless Empire had its Nightless Temple, the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion also had a faction formed by Heaven's Chosen, called the Nine Swords Pavilion. There were only 9 people in the pavilion every year, and all of them were the top geniuses of the Swordsmanship-Seeking Pavilion. The current leader of the Nine Sword Pavilion was naturally Hunting Shadow. Gui Sho, who had been killed by Su Yu previously, was a member of the Nine Swords Cabinet, who was ranked 4th. Now, apart from the mysterious Hunting Shadow, the other 7 members were all here. You still haven't found out who the Lightning Man is? Ghost Eye, who was ranked 2nd, asked sinisterly. Just like its name, Ghost Eye's entire body was like a giant eye. It floated in the air and communicated on the spiritual level. It was said that Ghost Eye's main body had been destroyed in an accident many years ago. Therefore, all that was left of it was a lump of soul. Even so, its soul was still extremely powerful. With just its soul body, it had remained the 2nd strongest member of the Nine Swords Cabinet. No one had been able to contend against it. No. We mobilized our spies in the Sleepless Empire and the Palace of Light, but there was no trace of him. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. The 3rd-ranked member of the Nine Swords Cabinet shook his head and muttered. Among the strong fighters of the Colored Glaze civilization, there were only a few who were adept at lightning. But there was not a single person who had trained their bodies to such a frightening level. Could there be a mistake in the information? Just by colliding with him, he was turned into ashes by the lightning arcs emitted from his body. Isn't that too unrealistic? The fifth-ranked member of the Nine Swords Cabinet said. They were very clear about Gui Sho's abilities. With his physique, only a Pathmaster at the Fish Dragon realm or above could destroy him with a single blow. Could that lightning man be such a strong fighter? No, I personally went to the scene to check. Gui Sho was indeed turned into ashes. The last member of the Nine Swords Cabinet had a look of fear that could not be erased. The atmosphere in the secret chamber suddenly became much more solemn. The Glaze ancient cave had not even begun, and they had already lost a capable fighter. How could they be happy? Perhaps it was someone from another civilization other than the 9 great 7-star civilizations, Gui Yang said with uncertainty. The other 6 nodded slightly. That was the only explanation. The Colored Glaze civilization was only one of the 9 strongest 7-star civilizations in the West region. The Lightning Man could very well have come from another 8 civilizations. Gui Sho can only blame his bad luck for inadvertently offending a passing expert. Just as everyone was accepting their fate, a beeping sound suddenly came from Gui Yang's body. Looking down, he saw that it was a message from his communication jade. After reading it, Gui Yang's giant eyes immediately shot out an unusually fierce cold light. The cold light was so intense that everyone present shuddered. Brother Gui Yang, what happened? Gui Yang laughed coldly. I received a piece of good news that could be considered bad news. What do you mean? The crowd did not understand what he meant. That person called Su Yu, he did not die. The people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion received the news and immediately sent it to the Sword Seeker Pavilion Master, followed by the Nine Swords Cabinet. What? He did not die. The crowd was shocked. They had heard that the one who attacked Su Yu was a Yuan-level realm expert. If he could survive, what was his life made of, for it to be so tough? But what followed was their intense excitement and murderous intents. They finally understood why Gui Yang had said that this was good news that could be considered bad news. The bad news was that Su Yu did not die. The good news was that Su Yu could die at their hands. Now that Su Yu had made enemies with the entire Sword Seeker Pavilion, everyone wanted to kill him. He had died under the lightning, and they could not do anything about it. Now that he was not dead, wasn't this giving them a chance to kill him? Inform Big Brother Hunting Shadow to come out of seclusion immediately. We'll pay him a visit together and annihilate him openly with a plan, someone suggested and prepared to send a message to Hunting Shadow on the spot. Wait, Gui Yang said calmly. Hunting Shadow lost a lump of his soul and is in the process of recovering. Remember not to disturb him. Only then did they extinguish the thought of searching for Hunting Shadow. The 7 of us working together to deal with Su Yu is more than enough, Gui Yang said confidently. The other 6 were convinced, not doubting him. This was because the schemes against the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire had all been planned by Gui Yang, and they had all succeeded without exception. We will listen to Brother Gui Yang, please give us your instructions. In their minds, Gui Yang would definitely ask them to find a way to lure Su Yu out, then provoke him to attack first. Then, they would find a reasonable reason to kill him. Unexpectedly, Gui Yang calmly said, first, we need to understand that this is a trap. Everyone present was stunned. A trap? Brother Gui Yang, what do you mean it is a trap? Ghost Eye's eyes were filled with shrewdness. Judging from how Su Yu hid himself so well, he must be an extremely cunning person. How could such a person so easily expose his whereabouts and let our people know about him? He had seen through Su Yu's intentions at a glance. The people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion are not good at gathering information, Gui Yang said slowly. Even so, we received the news at the first instant. If I am not mistaken, this news was deliberately spread by them. Everyone suddenly understood. Brother Gui Yang is wise, I admire you. Hiss. That makes sense. Haha, if Su Yu wants to compete with our brother Gui Yang in a battle of wits, I'm afraid he is nothing. Then, Brother Gui Yang, what should we do now? Gui Yang sneered. Of course, we should go with the flow and give Su Yu a huge surprise. A huge surprise. Didn't he want to lure us to seek revenge? Then, Let's do as he wishes. Gui Yang's voice gradually became softer, and he used telepathy to inform the 6 people of his specific plan. After a while, black shadows flashed in the secret room, and everyone left, arriving at the lodging of the Sleepless Empire. The people led by Gui Yang were hidden in the dark. After a long time, a servant walked out of the inn stealthily, nodding and bowing as he came before them. Greetings, Gui Yang and the members of the Nine Swords Pavilion. This waiter was the spy they had planted in the inn. Many of their previous plans had only succeeded because of the intelligence provided by this servant. How is it? Is Su Yu in his room? Gui Yang asked. The waiter shook his head and said, Lord Gui Yang's prediction is accurate. Su Yu left the inn 2 hours ago. Now, Xian Hua, Wu Xin Tai Constable, Xie Xiaoye, and the others are lying in ambush at his residence. Once you barge in, they will have a legitimate reason to attack you. Hearing this, the 6 members of the Nine Swords Pavilion were convinced. This is amazing, just as Brother Gui Yang predicted. This is indeed a conspiracy. Luckily, we have Brother Gui Yang. Otherwise, we would have been killed by Su Yu. Fut. Su Yu is really sinister, but luckily, we have Brother Gui Yang. The people flattered him. Gui Yang said calmly, if that is the case, let's give Su Yu a surprise. Where is he going now? The servant said awkwardly, I don't know, but I think he is hiding in some secret place, waiting to watch the show. Haha, then let's give him a good show, Gui Yang said. Spread the news that the Nine Swords Pavilion came to seek revenge on Su Yu, but we were jointly suppressed by the Bright Palace and the Sleepless Empire, suffering heavy casualties. Since Su Yu was hiding in the dark, he must have been paying close attention to the intelligence. Once he knew that the plan had succeeded, he would naturally come back to take a look. And once he came back, they would give him a surprise attack, one that Su Yu would never forget. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion quickly spread the news. For Lioli City, which was not huge, news spread quickly, especially such shocking news. Su Yu, who had secretly received the news, came back as if relieved of a heavy burden. He came to the front of the inn with a smile on his face, a hint of pride on his face. Chapter 2332. Little did he know that he had fallen into the trap of the Sword-Seeker Pavilion and the others. Ghost Eye and the others hid in the dark and looked at Su Yu, who had returned to investigate the situation as expected. They sneered. How dare you compete with our big brother Ghost Eye with such a trick? Haha, the fish has finally taken the bait. Ghost Eye smiled deeply and said, Brothers, what are you waiting for? Whoosh, whoosh. The 7 of them appeared from the dark with a sneer on their faces. They were prepared to block a direction. It would be very difficult for Su Yu to escape in an instant. Su Yu was caught off guard as he was blocked by them. A trace of panic flashed across his face. Su, you didn't expect this, did you? The 3rd-ranked member of the Nine Swords Pavilion sneered. There is always someone better than you. If you want to scheme against us, why don't you weigh yourself first and see how capable you are? Ghost Eye said calmly, Su Yu, we suspect that you have stolen our things. Please cooperate with us to check your storage space. This was, of course, a provocation to Su Yu. If Su Yu did not agree, they could use this as an excuse to attack him. If he agreed, they could use another reason to attack him. No matter what, Su Yu would not be spared today. Humph, if you want to catch me, it depends on your ability. After a moment of panic, Su Yu immediately used the power of space and rushed out of their encirclement. Ghost Eye was slightly surprised. This person is also proficient in the space divine technique. But before he could be surprised, Ghost Eye immediately led his people to chase after him. Chase. The 2 sides chased each other out of Lioli City and arrived at an abandoned manor on the outskirts. The manor was eerie and devoid of human habitation. The strangest thing was that after Su Yu sneaked into the manor, he seemed to have disappeared from the world. No matter how they searched, they could not find any trace of Su Yu. Where is Su Yu? Ghost Eye was surprised. They had clearly sensed that Su Yu had entered the manor, so why could they not find him? Lock this place down. Find Su Yu even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Unbeknownst to them, under the cover of nothingness, Su Yu was quietly leaving the manor and returning to a quiet and secluded courtyard in Lioli City. This courtyard seemed to be no different from the outside world, but in fact, it was secretly surrounded by experts. It was difficult for even a fly to fly in. In the yard, Su Yu entered silently under the cover of the power of nothingness. Then, he entered a secret room in the courtyard without batting an eyelid. After entering, the power of nothingness around Su Yu dispersed, and the small Kylin's figure appeared. I don't have much power of nothingness left. Use it sparingly. Ever since the little Chelene had evolved, most of the void force in its body had evolved into chaotic force. Only a small amount remained, so it could only be used once. Su Yu nodded, and a faint smile appeared on his face. It's enough. He looked at the center of the secret room, where a person who looked exactly like him was sitting cross-legged. To be precise, Su Yu's soul had left his body, and his real body had always been in the secret chamber. Sure, as his soul returned to his body, Su Yu revealed a knowing smile. This courtyard was the courtyard of the great palace lord of the Light Palace. 2 hours ago, he came to the courtyard to pay a visit to the Grand Palace Master. If it had been someone else, the Great Palace Master wouldn't have bothered to meet them. However, Su Yu was the second person in the recent era to receive the Divine Deer's teachings. The Great Palace Master had wanted to meet Su Yu for a long time. Knock. Knock. There was a knock on the door of the secret chamber. Su Yu stood up, opened the door, and saw a graceful and beautiful middle-aged woman standing outside. She looked like a blossoming peony. She was one of the 3 super strong people of the colored glaze civilization, the Great Palace Master of the Light Palace. When he first met her, Su Yu didn't expect the Great Palace Master to be so beautiful. He only knew that the Great Palace Master was a woman. Mr. Su, do you have any clues? The Great Palace Master stared at Su Yu, her eyes filled with indescribable eagerness. 2 hours ago, Su Yu suddenly came to visit, saying that he was here to return the time-fixing plate on the orders of the King of the Nightless Empire. She was naturally happy to meet Su Yu. She also wanted to see how the mysterious person who had received the teachings of the Light Divine Deer would be like. Su Yu, who had turned the Divine Deer's teachings upside down and crushed almost all the light emissaries under his feet, was rejected on the spot. Therefore, she immediately met him. Judging from the way he talked, Su Yu was indeed extraordinary. In terms of strength, the Great Palace Master could vaguely see that Su Yu was still hiding something. She especially felt a faintly discernible threat from him, which made her, who was one of the 3 super strong people of the colored glaze civilization, feel slightly uneasy. The 2 of them talked for a long time. In the end, the Great Palace Master couldn't help but ask about the Divine Deer. She was eager to know whether Su Yu had something special that could make the Divine Deer impart its teachings to him. In fact, she didn't have much hope. Perhaps Su Yu didn't understand why the Divine Deer imparted its teachings to him. Even if he knew, why would he tell her? Unexpectedly, Su Yu didn't deny it immediately. Instead, he said that he had some clues, but needed to sort them out. Thus, the Great Palace Master generously let Su Yu use her training room so that he could think about it in peace. 2 hours passed, and she really hoped to hear Su Yu's answer. Su Yu frowned and said thoughtfully, Great Palace Master, my knowledge is limited. If it's not the answer you want, please don't blame me. The Great Palace Master's voice was mellow and gentle. Mr. Su, you've already done your best by telling me about it. So, how could I blame you? Su Yu nodded and said, to tell you the truth, I once met an old Taoist who was sweeping the snow on the border of the 2 countries. I don't know his name. I think the reason why the Divine Deer imparted its teachings to me is probably related to this person. Old Taoist. The Great Palace Master's phoenix eyes were deep in thought. Was he alone? There was also a tombstone with 3 words carved on it. The Great Palace Master asked, which 3 words? Zhuo Tian Ran. Unexpectedly, the Great Palace Master's pupils contracted. She took a step forward and held Su Yu's arms. Subconsciously, she exerted a lot of force, causing the thunderbolts in Su Yu's body to shoot out involuntarily. An intense pain was transmitted from Su Yu's arms to his soul. The Great Palace Master's expression was now wide open, and her jade-like face was trembling slightly as she stared at Su Yu. She didn't have the calmness and composure of the great palace master of the Bright Palace at all. Suyu knew that the old Taoist was no ordinary person, just as he had guessed. Great Palace Master, please don't get agitated. It was only with this reminder that the Great Palace Master realized that he had lost control of himself. He quickly withdrew his hands and apologized. I'm sorry, I lost control of myself. Mr. Su, can you tell me where that old Taoist is? Suyu shook his head and said, I've already sent someone to the building. He then told the Great Palace Master everything that had happened. After listening to him, the Great Palace Master looked at the distant horizon and heaved a long sigh. It was fate. It turns out that he has always been in the colored glaze civilization. We've been searching for him for so many years in vain. Suyu's heart thumped. May I ask, Great Palace Master, who is that old Taoist? Didn't you see his name? The Great Palace Master turned around and looked at Suyu as he spoke softly. He saw it. Suyu was surprised. Is the name on the tombstone the old Taoist's name? Yes, the Great Palace Master said. Suyu was stunned. He didn't expect that someone would set up a tombstone for himself. That old Taoist is really no ordinary person. Is this person special? Is he the divine deer's master? Suyu made a guess. The Great Palace Master hesitated for a moment, then replied honestly, yes, but that's not all. He is the founder of the colored glaze civilization, a person who has lived from the previous era to the current era. Suyu's heart was calm, and he didn't find it strange at all. This was the only way to explain all of his mysteries. You don't seem surprised. The Great Palace Master was slightly surprised as he observed Suyu's expression. Anyone would be surprised if they knew that they had met an ancient venerable who had lived for 2 eras. There weren't many people who were as calm as Suyu. Suyu certainly wasn't surprised, as he had just swallowed the soul of an old monster from the previous era, which was the remnant soul of the human demon. Anything can happen at the end of the era, Suyu said calmly. Looking at the sky, Suyu cupped his fists and said, that's all I know. I've told you everything, so I'll take my leave now. The Great Palace Master nodded slowly. As a token of my gratitude, I'll give you something. She reached into her spatial storage world and was about to take something out. However, at this moment, she discovered that several important treasures were missing from her spatial storage world. One of them was a treasure that was comparable to the time-fixing compass. Who trespassed into my spatial storage world and stole my treasures? The Great Palace Master's aura changed from gentleness to extreme fierceness. The strong wind that was set off around her was strong enough to crush a Pathmaster at the level of a family master. Great Palace Master, what happened? Outside the small courtyard, the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Pathmasters, who were guarding the Great Palace Master, appeared one after another and asked in surprise. The Great Palace Master squinted and looked around. When she glanced at Suyu, she paused for a moment. Before Suyu came, there was nothing unusual in her spatial storage world. Could it be him? However, Suyu had been right under her nose all this time, trying to steal her things right in front of her. Did he think she was blind? Therefore, Suyu was the least likely culprit. She glanced at Suyu and the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Pathmasters, and her eyes became cold. She laughed angrily and said, "How dare you steal from me? You really don't respect me." She had to admit that the thief was too skillful. He was actually able to sneak into her storage world without her noticing. However, it was a pity that people at her level all had unique auras, and she could sense their location with just a thought. I'd like to see who is so daring. She closed her eyes slightly and opened them abruptly. She looked in a certain direction and laughed angrily. Let's go and see who they are. With a wave of her sleeves, the few of them, including Suyu, left the place instantly. Meanwhile, the people who were still searching for Suyu couldn't find him even after a thorough search. Instead, they found a well-hidden formation by accident. Why is there a concealment formation? Ghost Eye sensed that something was amiss. Suyu was nowhere to be found, but he left a concealment formation. Could there be some secret? A black light shot out of his eyes and shattered the formation. Chapter 2333. What appeared in front of them were top-notch treasures, talismans, and elixirs of the highest grade. Among all the items, there was one that was the most eye-catching. It was a cup that was emitting a gentle light. It was slightly taller than a teacup, and clear spiritual liquid flowed inside, emitting a rich fragrance. Those who smelled it all felt their fatigue disappear, and their bodies relax. The Holy Grail of Light. Gui Yang recognized it, and his expression changed rapidly. The Holy Grail of Light was the legacy token that the Great Palace Master of the Palace of Light always carried with him. Only the Great Palace Master of the Palace of Light could wield it. Why was it here? The bad feeling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Swish! At that moment, a few members of the Nine Swords Pavilion who could not control themselves suddenly rushed forward to fight for the treasures in the formation. Especially the Holy Grail, several people were fighting for it. Gui Yang's expression changed abruptly, and he shouted, "Don't move, put it down." However, in the face of a shocking treasure, there were not many people as calm as he was. They completely disregarded Gui Yang's warning, and were frantically fighting for it. A bunch of fools. This is a trap. Gui Yang personally took action, shooting out several beams of light from his eyes to separate them. After a round of hard work, they finally woke up from their frenzied state of snatching. Think about it, why would the legacy token of the Palace of Light be here? Gui Yang shouted. Why would Su lead us here? After that, they finally realized that something was wrong. But, didn't Su fall into our trap? How could he have had the chance to set up a trap here? It doesn't make sense, someone said doubtfully. Gui Yang's mood was unusually heavy. In his plan, Su had indeed fallen into their trap. However, there was an exception. That was, Su had already seen through his plan in advance. He thought that this was a brilliant move, but in fact, Su had already predicted that he would do this. His subsequent appearance and escape was the real pushing the boat with the current. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion had mistakenly thought that their plan had succeeded, and had chased them all the way here, only to discover the lost legacy token of the Palace of Light. Thinking of this, Gui Yang was unwilling to admit that this was true. He did not believe that a person's calculation ability could be so precise that it was as if he could predict the future. However, all the signs indicated that the other party was indeed an expert in using schemes without any loopholes. Put everything down, wipe the traces on them, and leave immediately. Ghost Eye felt that the situation was far from good, and he ordered. The 6 members of the Nine-Sword Pavilion felt a wave of reluctance in their hearts. These were all top-grade magic treasures that were rarely seen. They couldn't be bought even if one had the money. It would be a pity to give up like this. Just as they were hesitating, a cold snort was heard. I was wondering who it was. So it's the juniors of the sword-seeking pavilion. Thump! Ghost Eye's heart sank, as if he had fallen into a hunter's trap. The space in front of them suddenly shone brightly, and a group of people walked out of the blinding light. The leader of the group was a beautiful woman with almond-shaped eyes. She was dressed luxuriously and had a graceful temperament. She gave off a majestic feeling. His aura was impenetrable, but it gave off a boundless pressure. Seeing her, Ghost Eye's heart almost jumped out of his throat. The worst situation had occurred. No, it was worse than the worst-case scenario. The Great Palace Master himself had arrived. He immediately stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Great Palace Master of the Palace of Light, Ghost Eye. The rest of the members of the Nine-Sword Pavilion who were holding the treasures were at a loss because of the sudden arrival of the Great Palace Master. They were stunned and motionless. The Great Palace Master's almond-shaped eyes swept over them. When his gaze fell on the Holy Grail in one of their hands, his eyes turned cold. I have to say, the juniors of the sword-seeking pavilion are full of talented people. You should be proud of yourselves for stealing the legacy token from under my nose. Traces of murderous intent blew into everyone's heart like a cold wind. Hualala, the other 6 finally put down the things in their hands like hot potatoes, crying out that they were innocent. Ghost Eye hurriedly said, Great Palace Master, please listen to my explanation. How could we steal the token of the Palace of Light? Humph. A fish dragon realm master snorted coldly, causing the whole world to tremble. Were we blind to have misjudged the scene of you dividing the loot? At this moment, Ghost Eye hated this group of idiotic teammates. Or rather, he felt an inexplicable fear of Su Yu's scheming ability. Could it be that Su Yu knew exactly when they discovered the formation and when they fought for the treasures? Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that the people of the Palace of Light saw this scene? Thinking of this, he could not help but look at Su Yu. He saw Su Yu with his hands in his sleeves, looking calm and unruffled. "Why are you looking at me?" Su Yu noticed Ghost Eye's gaze and asked curiously, "You should explain to the Great Palace Master how you stole the legacy token." Ghost Eye's heart skipped a beat. He was sure that everything was done by Su Yu. He looked at Su Yu with awe in his eyes. "Great Palace Master, I have something to report." Ghost Eye knelt down on one knee to show his respect. "We chased Su Yu all the way here, and just happened to find something here. Great Palace Master, we came here and successfully caught the thief. Great Palace Master, please consider the coincidence." The Great Palace Master narrowed his eyes and said calmly, "Which Su Yu are you talking about?" "The one next to the Great Palace Master." Ghost Eye stared at Su Yu coldly. "If the Great Palace Master does not believe me, we are willing to search our souls. You only need to search our memories to confirm whether we are lying or not." The Great Palace Master's face turned cold again, and he said softly, "Are you talking about Su Yu of the Nightless Empire? When did you start chasing him?" "Between 2 hours ago and now." Ghost Eye's heart gradually calmed down. As long as the truth was told, the Great Palace Master, with his wisdom, should understand what was going on. Unexpectedly, the Great Palace Master said calmly, "What if I tell you that Su Yu has been by my side for the past few hours and has never left? In the past, Su Yu was either communicating with her or comprehending in the secret room. How could Su Yu have the opportunity to be chased by them and framed? What's more, he even stole her most important treasure right in front of her face." "What?" Ghost Eye couldn't believe it. They were obviously chasing Su Yu. He was absolutely right. But how could Su Yu be by the Great Palace Master's side during that time? It was totally inexplicable. Of course, this could be explained. Su Yu's body was in the secret room, but his soul had left his body and left silently under the cover of the small Kylin. Only an empty shell was left in the secret room, and the aura emitted from his body was still there. Therefore, the Great Palace Master mistakenly thought that Su Yu had never left. Seeing the Great Palace Master's face turn cold, Ghost Eye said hurriedly, "Wait. I can let the Grand Palace Master search my memory for the past 2 hours to ensure that not a single word of what I and my brothers have said is false." The Great Palace Master thought for a while, and when he was about to say something, Su Yu said from the side, "Great Palace Master, since this is related to me, I have to say something. If I remember correctly, the person in front of me is Ghost Eye, who is ranked second in the Nine Swords Pavilion, right? Isn't he most proficient in soul secret techniques? Modifying people's memories is a piece of cake for him." Ghost Eye's heart shook again. Did Su Yu expect that he would use memory search as evidence, so he investigated his information in advance? Not many people knew that he could modify other people's memories. It would be difficult to find out if he didn't investigate carefully. The Great Palace Master pondered for a while, and looked at Ghost Eye and the others with unfriendly eyes. She naturally knew that Ghost Eye was a soul body, and she had also heard about his ability to modify other people's memories. After being reminded by Su Yu, she immediately became suspicious. "Great Palace Master, I think it's the most useless to reason with the people of the sword-seeking pavilion," Su Yu said helplessly. Su Yu said helplessly, "You've already caught him red-handed, yet you're still trying to deny it. You even tried to frame me. Today, I happen to be next to you, and you can testify for me. If I wasn't in your sight, wouldn't I have been deceived by them?" His words struck a chord in the hearts of the 4 Fish Dragon Realm Masters. One of them said in disgust, "The people of the sword-seeking pavilion have always been despicable and shameless. Even if they were caught red-handed, they wouldn't admit it. Great Palace Master, you really don't need to talk nonsense with them. To deal with such shameless people, the best way is to deal with them directly." "That's right. They have been caught red-handed, and they have no remorse at all. They even want to frame Mr. Su." "Yes, as Mr. Su said, fortunately, we can all testify for Mr. Su. Otherwise, wouldn't we have been deceived by them?" The people of the sword-seeking pavilion really don't take the Palace of Light seriously. They are so fearless. Everyone hated the sword-seeking pavilion's recent actions to the core. Hence, everyone gave them a push when they were down, and they took it for granted that they would blame them. Hearing their words, the great palace master's eyes turned cold, and he sneered. You stole the Palace of Light's legacy token. Even if you are the descendants of the ghost teacher, you will not be forgiven. Ghost Eye couldn't explain himself. It was clearly Su Yu's doing, but he was now the one to blame. He stared at Su Yu fiercely, and his face was full of fear and resentment. Su, this isn't over yet. As he spoke, he crushed a jade slip hidden in his sleeve. All of a sudden, the space around them rippled, and a mass of pitch-black fog appeared, enveloping the 7 of them. The great palace master's eyes turned cold, and she struck out with her jade-like palm. The ghost fog shook violently, and Ghost Eye and the others, who were within it, felt their hearts in their throats. It was as if they had walked into the gates of hell. This was the attack of the 3 great experts of the colored glaze civilization, and they couldn't resist at all. Humph! Guanjiu, how dare you attack my people? Are you courting death? A skinny palm suddenly reached out from the ghost fog, and it met the great palace master's palm. Guanjiu's jade-like face changed slightly, and he said coldly, Ghost Teacher, you allowed your people to steal my legacy token. Aren't you provoking a war between the 2 sides? What a joke. What's the point of me stealing your token? The ghost teacher asked disdainfully. This question caused the radiant jade to hesitate slightly. Chapter 2334. However, Su Yu, who was standing at the side, said indifferently, I don't understand what Sword Seeker Pavilion Master is saying. It seems that not too long ago, you already had your hands on the star positioning plate. By right, the star positioning plate should be useless to you. The hesitation in Radiant Jade's heart immediately disappeared. The people of the Seek Sword Pavilion were secretive and insatiable. What was so strange about them stealing the inheritance token of the Palace of Light? Hearing this, a pair of scarlet, dry eyes appeared in the ghost fog and glared at Su Yu. Little bastard, it's you again. I haven't settled the score with you yet. Su Yu was fearless and calm. Elder, are you saying that I will stop you from snatching the time-fixing plate? If this is the case, then this junior feels that I have prevented senior from making a mistake, and prevented the dispute between the Palace of Light and the sword-seeking pavilion, and reduced the casualties that could be caused by both sides. This is a great merit. Junior doesn't ask for senior's gratitude, but I also don't want senior to repay kindness with evil. These words made the people of the Palace of Light grin. There weren't many people who could spoil someone else's plans in such a refreshing and refined manner. Kid, being sharp-tongued isn't a good thing. Ghost Master coldly warned, remember to watch your neck from now on. He may bid farewell to you at any time. Finished speaking, the ghost mist retracted and brought Gui Yang and the others away. Before leaving, Ghost Eye's eyes were filled with unwillingness. The meaning in his eyes was very clear. He was saying, we'll come again. Fight to the death. The corners of Su Yu's mouth curled up into an unnoticeable smile. Did he really think that his plan had come to an end? No, this was just the beginning. After everyone from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion left, the Grand Palace Master put away the radiant Holy Grail with an ugly expression. When he looked at Su Yu, he shot him an apologetic look. Young Master Su, I'm sorry for letting you see its effects. As a great palace master, it was indeed laughable for him to have his most precious inheritance token stolen in front of an outsider. Su Yu comforted him, Great Palace Master, you don't have to be like this. Even a horse stumbles, and people are always careless. I think it's better for the Grand Palace Master to be more vigilant in the future. The people from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion might not let this go. With the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion's style of doing things, they usually wouldn't stop until they achieved their goals. I understand. The Grand Palace Mistress clenched her fists. She had nowhere to vent her anger. She did not chase after him. Firstly, she was afraid of Ghost Teacher's strength. Secondly, she did not want their battle to affect the glazed ancient cave. Thus, he had nowhere to vent his anger. The only gratifying thing was that Su Yu did not look down on him. Instead, He took the initiative to comfort him. This made her feel better about Su Yu. After thinking for a moment, he took out a drop of milky white spiritual liquid from the Holy Grail and said, "This is the light divine liquid that is unique to the Light Palace. It is the favorite food of the light divine deer. It was inherited from that mysterious old Taoist, Shuo Tianran. But even the light divine deer will only consume it once every 100 years. This drop is for you. If you have a spirit pet, give it to it. It's good for it." Su Yu accepted it calmly, then said sincerely, "Thank you, Great Palace Master. Then this junior will take his leave." He looked around vigilantly, as if he was afraid that the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion would come back for revenge. "Well, let's go. Be careful on the way," the Great Palace Lord said. Only then did Su Yu leave and return to the inn where the Nightless Empire was stationed. When he arrived at the inn, Su Yu set up a space enchantment. Wow, the Great Palace Master was sold by the Master, but he still counted the money for the Master. "You are really bad," the little Kailin said with a smile. It was Su Yu who had stolen the legacy token. In the end, not only did the Great Palace Master wrongly blame the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion, but he also rewarded Su Yu with a precious drop of light divine liquid. Su Yu smiled. "I'm afraid I'll have to sell the Great Palace Master again." With a flick of his finger, he threw the divine liquid over. The little Kailin opened its mouth and swallowed it. A warm energy was slowly released from the little Kailin's body, making it roll on the ground comfortably. "This is good stuff. I feel like my cultivation has improved again. Are you going to break through again?" The little Kailin had just broken through not long ago. The little Kailin laughed. "It's still early. If there are another 100 drops, it should be no problem." Su Yu suddenly smiled mysteriously. "Then do you want more light divine liquid?" The little Kailin smiled wickedly. "You want me to steal it again?" To be able to stealthily steal the inheritance token from the storage world of the Great Palace Lord of the Light Palace, in this world, besides the little Kailin, who else could it be? The light divine cup was stolen by the little Kailin, and Su Yu's soul had brought it to the abandoned manor to hide it. Then, he played along and showed up to lure Ghost Eye and the others over. It seemed like a simple process, but the timing had to be precise. Otherwise, it would be easily seen through by Ghost Eye, who was a master of tricks. Okay. The little Kailin was very motivated after tasting the sweetness of the light divine liquid. Half a day later, the little Kailin came back angrily and lay on the ground. "That evil old woman hid the light divine cup somewhere. I couldn't find it after looking for it for so long. I'm so angry." Su Yu was not surprised. Losing the light divine cup once was enough to wake the Great Palace Master up. How could he allow him to lose it again? "Then what did you steal?" Su Yu asked. The little Kailin said fiercely, "That old woman hid the light divine cup and didn't let me drink it. So, I stole something very important from her." "What is it?" "Something very important." "What could it be?" "Doo-doo, bra, undergarments, I stole all of them," the little Kailin said angrily. Su Yu was stunned and asked, "Where are the things?" "They have been sent to the rooms of Ghost Eye and the others. They are in every room. Not a single one was left out," the little Kailin said unhappily. Su Yu smiled strangely. Now we can rest easy and not worry about being disturbed. On the other side, in a secret room, the 7 people of Ghost Eye met again in secret. "We suffered a great defeat this time because we underestimated the enemy. Don't be discouraged, we can start again." Ghost Eye comforted the depressed people. "That's right. We were tricked by Su Yu. How can we let this go?" A member of the 9 Swords Pavilion clenched his fists and said. His words immediately aroused their indignation. "Yes, we must make that despicable person pay the price he deserves. So shameless. He was the one who stole it, but in the end, he framed us for it. Did you see his expression when he was next to the Great Palace Master? His innocent face is so infuriating. Yes, how can there be such a shameless person in this world? How could he do such a thing?" Ghost Eye, who was listening at the side, had to cough to interrupt their conversation. What a schemer had was wisdom in the eyes of his own people, but cunning in the eyes of his enemies. While they were evaluating Su Yu, they were also talking about themselves. In terms of being despicable, shameless, and shameless, they were not inferior to Su Yu. Let's all take a break and go back to think about whether there is a better way to punish Su Yu, Ghost Eye suggested. Everyone nodded. If they did not teach Su Yu a deep lesson, they would not be able to swallow their anger. Ghost Eye also returned to his room while pondering. Dozens of plans flashed through his mind, but the confident him was now very hesitant. He was worried that everything would be seen through by Su Yu like last time, and he would be led by the nose and fall into a trap. As he pondered, he opened the seal of his residence and entered the room. As soon as he entered, a faint fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Ghost Eye came back to his senses and walked in the direction of the fragrance. He found a pink bra on his bed. Bra? Whose is it? Ghost Eye picked it up and rubbed it, slightly confused. His residence was protected by a seal, and outsiders should not be able to enter at all. Just as he was feeling puzzled, a voice that scared him out of his wits appeared. Of course it's mine. Ghost Eye was almost scared to death. Without thinking, he ran out. However, before he could take a step, his head was hit by a destructive palm. Puff. As an eye, it was almost annihilated on the spot, leaving only a remnant of its soul to escape. And this was the result of the sword-seeking pavilion master, Ghost Teacher, discovering it in time and stopping it. Bright Jade, are you crazy? How dare you attack in Lioli City? Aren't you afraid of affecting the Glaze Ancient Cave? Ghost Teacher's angry roar came from the sky. Unexpectedly, the radiant jade seemed to have gone mad and attacked Ghost Teacher without a care. What glazed ancient cave? Go to hell. Even if I have to destroy the glazed ancient cave today, I will burn you despicable vermin to ashes. She was really furious. First, he stole her holy grail, and then he came to steal her bra, undergarment, and other undergarment. And each member of the Nine Swords Pavilion got one. This was a blatant provocation. How could Bright Jade not be angry? Bang, bang. The sky flashed with muffled sounds like thunder. The entire Lioli city was shaking. Monarch Xiao Liefeng's expression changed, and he immediately rushed forward to mediate. If they continued fighting, it would really affect the Glaze Ancient Cave below. Only then did the radiant jade gradually stop, but her face was flushed with anger, and she said angrily, "Tell those bastards of yours not to take even half a step out of the manor. Otherwise, I will kill every single one of them, and every group of them will be exterminated." Radiant Jade, who had always been kind and magnanimous to others, flew into a rage. The oath she made was even integrated into heaven and earth. Whoosh, full of anger, Bright Jade left, but she did not go far. Instead, she waited in the dark. As long as there was an opportunity, she would immediately attack Ghost Eye and the rest. Ghost Teacher was furious. Ghost Eye and the rest had always been in the villa and did not leave. How could they have the chance to steal Bright Jade's bra? Moreover, what was the point of stealing it? But Bright Jade did not listen to his explanation. She was caught red-handed, and had been caught twice. Why would she listen to his explanation? Ghost Teacher returned dejectedly and immediately treated Ghost Eye, who was heavily injured. At the same time, he gathered the other 6 members of the Nine Swords Pavilion with pale faces. Obviously, they had heard Bright Jade's angry oath. They were now the target of a super expert. Who would not be afraid? During this period, you will stay by my side and not leave. This meant that they could not leave the villa until they reached the Glaze Ancient Cave. Thinking of this, they were both afraid and angry. Chapter 2335. What he was afraid of was the death revenge of Radiance Jade. Of course, he was angry because of Su Yu. As the saying goes, when one sits at home, disaster comes from the heavens. What did they do? Wasn't it just a ploy behind closed doors? Why was he inexplicably framed as a bust thief and even targeted by one of the 3 super experts of the colored glaze civilization? Their hearts were filled with resentment and injustice. Ghost Eye's situation was the most miserable. His soul had almost shattered for no reason. In the following days, he had to continuously heal himself. Surnamed Su, "I'm not done with you." Ghost Eye roared at the sky. In the following days, Lioli City was indeed peaceful. There were no more people from the Seek Sword Pavilion strolling on the streets, not to mention those who came out to cause trouble. The people of the Nightless Empire and the Palace of Light had obtained the long-awaited peace. They did not understand why this was happening. Even Xie Xiaoye and the others. In a private room of a restaurant controlled by the Nightless Kingdom, Su Yu, Wu Xin Tai Yu, Xie Xiaoye, and Shen Hua were having a small gathering. How did you manage to stuff our Grand Palace Lord's bra into the hands of the sword-seeking pavilion's people? Shen Hua asked with a cold expression. How could Su Yu admit it? Su Yu shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, "You've wronged me. Even your great palace master believes that it was the sword-seeking pavilion's doing, so why are you the only one who thinks that it was me? Don't quibble," Shen Hua said with a straight face. The others might not know about it, but she was aware that Su Yu had said that he would deal with them personally. The outcome was exactly the same as what Su Yu had planned. Shen Hua found it hard to believe that Su Yu wasn't behind all of this. The heartless Iron Arrester cast a knowing smile at Su Yu. "I didn't expect that apart from your strength, your ability to scheme is also quite brilliant." When Su Yu said he was going to take action personally, she was very confused about where Su Yu got his confidence from and where Xie Xiaoye got her confidence in Su Yu. Now, he finally understood that Su Yu seemed to be quite good at using stratagems. He had actually fooled the people of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. One had to know that the Ghost Eye of the Seek Sword Pavilion was an expert in playing tricks. It was extremely difficult to set up a trap for him. In the end, Su Yu really succeeded. Xie Xiaoye, who was at the side, laughed happily. She looked at Su Yu, her eyes full of admiration. When it comes to scheming, there is probably no one who is a match for Su Yu. Gui Yang can only blame his bad luck for running into him. Su Yu had an innocent look on his face. "Hey, I told you, it has nothing to do with me. How could I have the ability to steal the palace master's bra?" Shen Hua said angrily. She clearly knew that it was Su Yu's doing, but she couldn't find any evidence to use against him. So, apart from glaring at him, there was nothing she could do. Su Yu coughed dryly and changed the topic. "In a few days, the Glaze Ancient Cave will officially open. I wonder if you understand the situation inside." Only Shen Hua had the right to speak on this matter. Su Yu, Xie Xiaoye, and the Wuxin Iron Arrester were all outsiders. Only Shen Hua was born in the colored glaze civilization. Shen Hua became serious, shaking her head. "What I know is very limited, because the last time the Glazed Ancient Cavern opened was already a very long time ago, at least several generations before the Palace of Light." Heartless Iron Constable said, "Miss Shen Hua, please enlighten me." "All right, I will tell you sooner or later." Since they were working together, it was only right for them to share information. "What I know was told to me by our great palace master." According to her, the Glaze Ancient Cave is divided into 3 levels: heaven, earth, and human. The human level is the lowest level, the earth level is the middle level, and the highest is the heaven level. In every level, there is an ancient glaze platform. If you meditate on it, your training speed will be 10 times faster than outside. Moreover, the sea in the stone platform will release a mysterious aura that is beneficial to the cultivation of the Pathmaster. If you train for 5 years in the human level, the probability of breaking through to the next level of the Pathmaster is 30%. If you train for 5 years in the earth level, the probability of breaking through is 60%, and if you train for the heaven level, the probability of breaking through is 100%. After listening, Xie Xiaoye and the Wuxin Iron Arrester had different reactions. The former was deeply excited, while the latter was more reserved. Although her emotions could not be seen on the surface, the excitement in her heart was still visible. Even Su Yu yearned for it. 100% chance of breaking through to the next level of the Pathmaster was really impressive. It was a pity that Su Yu had yet to break through to the next level of the Pathmaster, so the aura was probably useless to him. However, it would still be very beneficial to the little Kailin. Is there a difference in the difficulty of the level 3 heavens? The Wuxin Iron Arrester pondered. The greater the reward, the greater the risk. Yes. The human level is filled with many glaze monsters of the master level. They can swallow anyone who enters and turn them into a part of the glaze ancient cave. Occasionally, there are even glaze monsters of the fish dragon realm. Su Yu already knew that the fish dragon realm master was at the same level as Xia Yian. As he thought about it, his heart sank. Was the human level so dangerous? The earth level is a level that is not recommended for entry. The glaze monsters of the lowest level are all at the fish dragon realm. There is even a strange glaze emperor whose strength is equivalent to our great palace master. At this point, Xian Hua had already stopped at the sight of the earth level, not daring to have any wild hopes. As for the heaven and earth level, it is forbidden to enter. In fact, it is unknown whether there is an ancient glaze platform in the heaven level, because no one has ever trained in it. Xian Hua revealed a look of deep fear. According to the great palace master, the lowest cultivation of the glaze monsters inside is on par with her. It is very likely that there are strong people who are far stronger than her. As for the heaven level, even the bright light jade would not dare enter. Even if she, Ghost Teacher, and Xiao Lifeng joined forces, they might not be able to enter easily. Therefore, the great palace master suggested that our goal is the human level. This time, we are only training. There is no need to risk our lives. Otherwise, we will lose more than we gain. Hearing this, Xie Xiaoye gasped. What kind of place is the glaze ancient cave? How could there be such a terrifying glaze monster? It was the first time that the heartless Iron Constable had heard of it. He nodded and said, "It is indeed unexpected that there is such a place within the glaze civilization. I wonder how it was formed." Su Yu's brows were tightly knitted. The stronger the living creature, the more resources it would consume to grow. The glaze monsters were so powerful, and the resources they consumed were unimaginable. Could a small glaze ancient cave accommodate the growth of so many living creatures? His heart was full of questions. Is there any other information? Su Yu asked. Xian Hua shook her head. That's about it. However, the Swordseeker Pavilion should know more, because the glaze ancient cave was discovered by the ancestors of the Swordseeker Pavilion. I don't know how many secrets they have inherited about the glaze ancient cave. Su Yu and the other two frowned slightly. Based on the Swordseeker Pavilion's style, there was no doubt that they were hiding something. On this trip to the glaze ancient cave, they really had to be wary of the Swordseeker Pavilion. Let's call it a day. We will depart in 3 days, Xian Hua said. Su Yu nodded. Knowing the dangers of the glaze ancient cave, Su Yu needed to make some preparations. By the way, I heard from the great palace master that the Nightless Empire is going to add 2 more representatives. Xian Hua suddenly remembered and asked. Su Yu was a little confused. The emperor did not mention it to me. At present, there were only a few representatives from the Nightless Empire. They were Su Yu, the Heartless Iron Constable, Xie Xiaoye, and Princess Qian Yu. The rest were not available. Where did the other 2 come from? So you don't know either. It seems that the 2 of them paid a high price to enter, Xian Hua said indifferently. The more people there were from the Nightless Empire, the more powerful their cooperation would be. The group of people dispersed. Su Yu thought about it for a moment, then went back to his residence to prepare. At present, the greatest treasure he had should be the remnant of the Yuan realm. Next was the Undead Soul realm. Over the next few days, he sorted out everything he had learned and adjusted his state of mind. 3 days later, he arrived at the center of the city. At the same time, Guangming Jade, Xiao Lifeng, and the Ghost Teacher were all there. Of course, the atmosphere between the 3 of them was not friendly. Guangming Jade's eyes were full of murderous intent, constantly scanning the Ghost Eye and the others. They did not dare to raise their heads. The Ghost Teacher stared at Guangming Jade coldly. Xiao Lifeng stood firmly beside Guangming Jade, standing up to the Ghost Teacher. The arrival of Su Yu and the others drew the Ghost Teacher's cold eyes. Especially when he saw Su Yu, the fury in his eyes could not be more obvious. Su Yu was fearless, looking straight at the Ghost Teacher. All of a sudden, Su Yu vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the Ghost Teacher, but he could not tell what was wrong. "Kid, look at me again, and I will gouge your eyes out," the Ghost Teacher said coldly. Before Su Yu could speak, Guangming Jade said coldly, "Is that so? Then I will annihilate all of your disciples, not even sparing a single chicken or dog. Xiao Lifeng also stepped forward and snorted. Ghost teacher, you are a senior. How about you have some magnanimity? Magnanimity? The ghost teacher was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Su Yu's actions did not seem like something a junior would do. How could he forgive him? However, this was not the time to argue. Is everyone here? If so, let's depart quickly, the ghost teacher urged. The people of the Bright Palace were all here, but the people of the Nightless Empire were not. Right at that moment, a white cloud flew over from afar. 3 people stood on the cloud. Su Yu looked over. Apart from one of the people in the bamboo hat, who had deliberately concealed his face, he actually knew the other 2. One of them was Biyun Hongxian from the No. 1 Peerless family. The other person who led the way could be considered an old acquaintance. Greetings, Your Majesty. The 2 have arrived. The one who spoke was a seemingly noble and arrogant layman. He had a transcendent temperament, which made him seem incompatible with the world. However, he was bowing and scraping before the monarch. He did not have the integrity that an otherworldly expert should have. It was obvious who this person was. Thank you, Layman Qingyuan, the monarch said calmly. This person was Layman Qingyuan, who had been sent by the monarch to Liuli City to prepare for matters related to the Glaze Ancient Cave. Not long ago, he had been ordered to bring the 2 new members here. Layman Qingyuan said, "It is the duty of a subject to serve Your Majesty." He lowered his posture and stood slightly to the side. Coincidentally, Su Yu was standing beside him. He subconsciously gave Su Yu a kind smile and said, "Next, I will have to trouble all of you to fight for the Empire, fight for Su Yu." The next moment, Layman Qingyuan's eyes widened. Chapter 2336. How could he not recognize Su Yu? The young man who had delivered the letter to Mie Zheng of the 7 absolute civilizations, the young man who had offended him. He had almost forgotten about this person. He had never thought that he would meet him here. Coming back to his senses, Householder Qingyuan thought that Su Yu was just an insignificant person who happened to be standing beside the heartless Iron Constable. He waved his hand at him, his tone impatient and disdainful. "Please move aside, don't block the representative of the Empire." Su Yu touched his nose. He wanted to say something, but looking at Householder Qingyuan, who was pretending to be aloof, he took a step back. "It's really. You don't have any rules at all. Just anyone can stand here." Householder Qingyuan spoke calmly as he stood at Su Yu's previous position. He didn't even look at him. The heartless Iron Constable beside him frowned. "Who are you?" Householder Qingyuan immediately put on a pleasant expression. "You must be the famous heartless Iron Constable of the West regions." "I am Householder Qingyuan. It's an honor to meet you." The heartless Iron Constable said calmly, "I am asking why you are standing beside me." Householder Qingyuan was stunned. How could a small fry like Su Yu stand here, while he, the teacher of Princess Chenyu and the famous celestial Lord Qingyuan, had to stand aside? However, due to the importance of the heartless Iron Constable in the eyes of the monarch, Householder Qingyuan only dared to curse in his heart. He obediently stood back. As he retreated, he encountered Su Yu again. Householder Qingyuan almost bumped into him as he retreated. His expression turned cold. "Do you have ears? I asked you to leave this place. How could a small fry like you enter this place? Get lost." He had suffered a lot at the hands of the heartless Ironcatcher, so he had a lot of anger in his heart. Now that he had run into Su Yu, who he disliked, he would naturally not be polite with his words. He. Su Yu laughed. A small fry? However, he did not argue. Under Householder Qingyuan's stare, he continued to retreat until he was in the middle of the crowd. Only then did Householder Qingyuan snort and look away. The monarch was busy making arrangements for Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. He did not notice the situation. "Come, you guys should get to know each other." The monarch brought the 2 of them to the gathering place and introduced them to Wu Xin, Iron Constable, Xian Hua, and the others. "This is Biyun Hongxian. You should have met her before." The heartless Iron Constable had met him once before. He nodded his chin, indicating that he was greeting him. "This is young Master Long. Due to some special reasons, he cannot show his true face. Please understand. The monarch introduced the man in the bamboo hat. I hope we can cooperate happily, the man in the bamboo hat said in a hoarse voice. The heartless iron constable took another look at the man in the bamboo hat. She could tell that even his voice was fake. For some reason, he had to hide it so deeply. After introducing the two of them, the monarch began to introduce the people from the Nightless Empire and the Palace of Light. He raised his hand and said, where is he? The direction he was pointing to was exactly where Su Yu was standing. Why was Su Yu nowhere to be found? The heartless iron constable glanced at the crowd behind her and saw Su Yu with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He was calm and composed, as if he was just a spectator. She couldn't help but find it funny. What was he trying to do? The monarch followed her gaze and said in astonishment, "Young Master Su, what are you doing? Why did the representative of the Nightless Empire retreat into the crowd?" Su Yu said helplessly, "I was driven here by someone. I had no choice. He is powerful, and I am afraid of offending him." Driven away by someone? The monarch wondered if Su Yu was joking. Who in the Nightless Empire didn't know that Su Yu was the chief representative appointed by him? Who didn't know that Su Yu's strength was extraordinary? Who dared to drive him away? Who is it? Tell me about it. The monarch was surprised. Su Yu said, "Whoever is standing where I should be standing is the one who will be the one." The monarch looked over. The place where Su Yu had been standing was empty. He looked forward and saw householder Qingyuan standing a little behind him. His face was abnormally pale, and his eyes were darting around. The monarch's face fell. "You drove young Master Su into the crowd." Plop. The monarch was extremely dignified. With just a glance, Layman Qingyuan's inner resistance was completely obliterated. His knees went soft as he knelt on the ground and cried, "King, please spare my life. Please spare my life. I didn't know that he was the Imperial Kingdom's representative." In fact, even at this moment, he couldn't believe that a mere half-step Dowlord had become the chief representative of the Empire. "You didn't know?" The monarch glared at him. The swordsmanship-seeking veranda and the surrounding martial artists were already whispering to each other. Householder Qingyuan had made such a blunder on such a solemn occasion. He had lost face. Get lost. The monarch was furious. He wanted to slap this old thing to death. You are not allowed to step foot into the Nightless Empire for the next 100 years. He still hadn't vented his anger, so he chased Householder Qingyuan out of the Empire and forbade him from ever entering again. Householder Qingyuan's face turned pale, and he was disheartened. The cavern that he had worked so hard to manage for many years had been burned to the ground. Now, he didn't even have a place to stay. "Father, you don't have to be so harsh. After all, he used to be my teacher." Princess Chenyu stood up and spoke for him. It wasn't that she cared about the teacher-student relationship between her and Householder Qingyuan, but that she didn't want Su Yu to take the limelight. Just because he had offended Su Yu, he wanted to expel the famous Householder Qingyuan from the Empire. Wasn't her father thinking too highly of Su Yu? Shut up. Unexpectedly, the monarch, who had always doted on her, shouted sternly, "He treated the talents of the Empire so harshly. He is a meritorious official. Not crippling his cultivation is already being lenient." Princess Chenyu stuck out her tongue. Sensing that her father was really angry, she didn't dare to plead for mercy. The monarch looked at Householder Qingyuan, who shivered and left immediately. "Wait, return the 9-5 heaven cold needle that I gave you," the monarch said. The Nightless Empire had 99 9-5 heaven cold needles, and one of them had been given to Householder Qingyuan. Now that he was being chased out of the Nightless Empire, the needle had to be returned. Hearing this, Householder Qingyuan's body trembled violently. With a long face, he reluctantly took out the 9-5 heaven cold needle. This was one of his most powerful treasures, and it was gone just like that. If Princess Chenyu hadn't pleaded for mercy, the monarch might not have remembered it. Now, it was all over. Princess Chenyu lowered her head, looking apologetic. Not only had she failed to save Householder Qingyuan, but she had also harmed him. Householder Qingyuan was chased away in front of the crowd, his face covered in dirt. The monarch came before Su Yu. His expression softened as he said, "I'm very sorry, you have been wronged." Su Yu shook his head. "He didn't do anything to me, so why should I be wronged?" "No matter." Although he said that, the monarch still felt a little embarrassed. His own people had almost chased Su Yu away in front of the Glaze ancient cave. No matter what, he had failed in his duty. "This 9-5 heaven cold needle is for you to protect yourself. Consider it a small compensation." The monarch thought for a moment, then gave the needle to Su Yu. Princess Qianyu cast a jealous look at him. The 9-5 heaven cold needle was not given away so easily. Unless it was someone who had made a great contribution to the empire, no one could get it easily. Householder Qingyuan had only gotten one because she had begged for it in order to gain her father's favor. Even so, she had put in a lot of effort to get it. Now, she had taken the initiative to give it to Su Yu. The heartless Iron Constable looked at him in surprise. Even she had never received such treatment. The monarch's expectations of Su Yu were quite high. Xie Xiaoye was also very envious. It was said that the 9-5 heaven cold needle was made by the first monarch of the Nightless Empire. There were a total of 99 of them, and each of them had the power to freeze a fish dragon realm master into ice shards on the spot. Unexpectedly, Su Yu had gotten one so easily. Su Yu was also a little envious of the item. He bowed gratefully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Haha, make good use of it," the monarch instructed, then introduced Su Yu to Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. "This is the chief representative of the empire, Su Yu," the monarch introduced. Biyun Hongxian smiled gently and said teasingly, "You have quite a lot of names." In the first peerless family, he called himself Su Ruchu, and in the colored glaze civilization, he called himself Su Yu. Which one was his real name? Su Yu replied with a slight smile. When his eyes swept over the man in the bamboo hat, he vaguely sensed a very faint trace of hostility. Su Yu looked him up and down and said, "Brother, have we met before?" The man in the bamboo hat said hoarsely, "No." "If not, where did the hostility come from?" Su Yu was slightly vigilant. He had most likely met this man before, and there was a conflict between them. Su Yu calmly withdrew his gaze and nodded with a smile. "Are you done with the introductions? Let's start, don't waste time," the Ghost Master said impatiently. Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Yu looked at each other and nodded in agreement. "Everyone, listen up. Once the entrance of the Glaze ancient cave is opened, 2 passages will appear. They will not last longer than 3 breaths. You must enter within 3 breaths," Xiao Lifeng reminded solemnly. Yang Hua of the Bright Palace asked, "What will happen if we don't pass and get stuck in the passage?" "You will die," Xiao Lifeng answered concisely and affirmatively. "Die?" Everyone became much more solemn. "So, you must be quick, without any delay," Xiao Lifeng reminded again. "Who else has a question?" The group of heaven rulers tensed their muscles, ready to charge forward with all their might. They kept their mouths shut and stared intently 1,000 feet in front of them. That was where the 2 entrances were going to appear. "Get ready," Xiao Lifeng bellowed. He looked at Guangming Yu and the Ghost Master and opened their own space worlds at the same time. This time, they had brought with them the 100 years of accumulation from their respective influences, almost emptying their respective influences. In order to create hope for the heaven rulers they had nurtured to enter an 8-star civilization, they had given everything they had. Crash, the cavern worlds opened, and the majestic and suffocating resources inside were all burned. Burning purple flames flowed out of the 3 space worlds and gathered 1,000 feet in front of them. As more and more resources were burned, the gathered flames became more vigorous, faintly forming the shape of 2 doors. They were coming. Su Yu was on high alert, most of his attention focused on the front. But because he was wary of Mr. Dragon and the Sword Seeker Pavilion, he still paid some attention to them. Who knew that when he paid attention, he really did discover something unusual. Chapter 2337. The people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire were staring straight ahead. The people of the Sword-Seeking Pavilion seemed to be paying attention to what was ahead, but they were not. They glanced behind them from time to time, and their postures were not sprinting forward, but backward. Suyu immediately realized that something was wrong. Be careful, behind. However, Suyu's warning was too late. The two giant doors in front of them were still slowly taking shape, but a giant purple door appeared behind them without warning. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion were prepared, and all the members of the Nine Swords Pavilion flew inside. When the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire noticed, they had all flown in. In the short span of 3 breaths, 2 breaths had already passed. There was only 1 breath left for them to react, and there was no way they could break in. Only Suyu could detect it in advance, and he had a chance to break in. He sighed secretly. The Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire had been careless. The people of the sword-seeking pavilion knew the Glaze Ancient Cave the most, and they should have taken precautions. In the end, they were too superstitious about the past, and thought that the passageway would take shape in front of them. Suyu had no time to care about the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire, and he was the only one who could react. He could only enter first to see if he could find a way to open the passageway from the inside, and then let the people of the Light Palace and the Sleepless Empire in. Swoosh! Suyu shot towards the entrance like an arrow from a bow. However, just as he was about to enter, a sinister and terrifying ghostly hand reached out to grab him. "Junior, I am here. And you think you can do whatever you want?" The Ghost Master had been paying attention to Suyu, and when he realized that he had noticed in time, he immediately tried to stop him. Suyu's heart sank, and he had to retreat. A space domain was used to fold space, and he avoided the grab. Even so, he was still shaken by the ghostly claw, and the blood in his body tumbled, and he had a taste of blood in his throat. Xiao Lifeng and Guanjiu also rushed over, shielding Suyu behind them. Looking at the giant door that was slowly closing, the two were shocked and bewildered. "My king, it's bad, the 2 doors are gone. Grand Palace Master, look." Their people immediately reminded them. The 2 looked back and saw the 2 giant doors condensed from flames 1,000 feet away, shrinking rapidly. Both of them turned pale with fright. They glared at Ghost Master in shock and anger. "What did you do?" Ghost Master said calmly, "Hehe. I don't have the ability to tamper with the Glaze Ancient Cave. It's you guys who don't know how to open the Glaze Ancient Caves in trance." Sure enough, the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion had deliberately concealed many things. As a result, when the Glazed Ancient Cave opened, only those who were prepared in advance from the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion could enter. The rest of the people were all blocked outside. The Palace of Light and the Nightless Imperial Kingdom had spent 100 years accumulating, but in the end, it had all become a gift for the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade, who had been greatly deceived, were furious. The Glazed Ancient Cave was related to whether or not they could survive the destruction of the era. They could tolerate anything, but this was beyond their bottom line. "Ghost Teacher, have you thought about how you want to die?" Radiant Jade's face was ice-cold. Xiao Lifeng was equally unfriendly. He stared at him and said, "Fine. Since you don't want the Nightless Empire to live, I will destroy your sword-seek pavilion with my remaining body." Both of them were truly infuriated. They had decided to eliminate the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion at all costs. "Ha ha ha, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Ghost Master was unbridled. He laughed loudly and flew into the sky. His look of being unable to do anything to him was indeed infuriating. Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade, who were enraged, prepared to chase after him and fight to the death with Ghost Master. However, right at that moment, Suyu reminded them, "Calm down, both of you. Instead of being entangled with that old man, we might as well destroy the Glaze Ancient Cave and bury all his precious pupils inside." His words brought the 2 of them back to reality. The reason why the 3 super strong men had agreed not to fight in the Glaze Ancient City was because they were worried that their abilities would be too powerful and affect the Glaze Ancient Cave. In the past, they had restrained themselves in order to protect that place. Now that the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion had played a ruthless trick and excluded everyone except them, what else was there to worry about? Moreover, Ghost Master's behavior was rather suspicious. This man had always been vicious, but he had flown into the sky before the battle had even begun. His intention was clear. He wanted to lure the two super-strong men away and create a safe environment for the heaven rulers of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion who had entered the Glaze Ancient Cave. Understanding this, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade looked at each other and saw the crazed desire for revenge in each other's eyes. Boom! The two of them attacked together, and they attacked the area beneath Glaze City. All of a sudden, the entire Glaze City was moved by the two of them to a safe zone hundreds of millions of miles away, revealing a bare piece of land. Below them was the location of the Glaze Ancient Cave. The two of them attacked together, their faces ashen. How terrifying was the all-out attack of a super-strong man. Almost half of the Glaze civilization felt an incomparably huge tremor. It was as if a dead heart had suddenly started beating. The place where they attacked left a bottomless abyss, and the remnants of the destructive energy wandered on the scorched earth. Faintly, a special and rich spiritual energy leaked out from the depths of the ground. It was not the aura of the Glaze civilization, but the Glaze Ancient Cave. The attack just now had indeed affected the Glaze Ancient Cave. The two of them did not stop. After the first attack, they were preparing for an even more majestic attack. They looked as if they would not rest until they killed the elites of the swordsmanship-seeking pavilion. Stop! The ghost teacher, who had already escaped into the sky, came back with an ashen face and tried to stop them. The rest of the light glanced at Su Yu, and the murderous intent in their eyes reached an unprecedented peak. It was this man again. If not for his reminder, the furious Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade might not have thought of this. It was all because of him that the plan to lure the two of them away had failed completely. Won't I lose face if I stop just because you say so? Xiao Lifeng sneered and released the attack that he had been preparing for a long time. Radiant Jade did not show any mercy. His cold expression was extremely serious. Boom! This time, the surface of the entire Glaze civilization was cracked open. Countless mountains were crushed, rivers collapsed, and countless cities collapsed into ruins. The attack of the two of them had directly triggered a disaster for the Glaze civilization. The area above the Glaze Ancient Cave, which was the source of the disaster, was a scene of devastation. Looking up, the surroundings were completely unrecognizable. Nothing of the past could be seen. An even purer aura was surging from the depths of the earth, indicating that the Glaze Ancient Cave had been affected even more severely. Perhaps a shocking change had already occurred in the Glaze Ancient Cave, causing the deaths of some of the people of the sword-seeking veranda. The ghost teacher was anxious, and he yelled, "Enough! Stop, all of you! I have a way to salvage the situation and let your people re-enter the Glaze Ancient Cave." Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade did not believe a single word he said. They continued to prepare for the next attack without saying a word. If they continued to fight, the Glaze Ancient Cave might really be in trouble. The ghost teacher was both angry and anxious. He said hurriedly, "I, the ghost teacher, swear to the heavenly law that everything I have said is true. Otherwise, I will be reduced to ashes immediately." The higher the level of the martial artist, the more binding the oath they made to the heavens. For a super-strong martial artist like the ghost teacher, if he made an oath and violated it, he would suffer the backlash of the oath. Hearing that, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade slowly stopped and said, "Speak." The ghost teacher said reluctantly, "According to the inheritance of the sword-seeking veranda, as long as these flames have not been extinguished, there is still hope to open another door." Xiao Lifeng looked at the dying flames and said, "Tell me the details." Radiant Jade also became nervous, and he stared at the other party. "As long as you take out 100 years of accumulation and throw it into the flames again, I will have a secret technique to summon the door back." There were two conditions. The first was 100 years of accumulation, and the second was a secret technique. "I will provide the secret technique, but I am afraid that the two of you will have to pay for the accumulation of 100 years. The ghost teacher dodged his gaze. Xiao Lifeng snorted angrily, "Why should we pay? Everything was caused by the sword-seeking veranda. Of course you have to take responsibility." Radiant Jade's attitude was the same. What a joke. The sword-seeking veranda had wasted their 200 years of accumulation, and they had to pay for another 100 years. Large forces like them were expending huge amounts of resources at every moment. The resources they had stored were only enough to maintain the normal operation of the force for 150 years. They had already used up 100 years, and the remaining resources were only enough for 50 years. This was already the limit. If even the last 50 years of accumulation had to be used up, what would the people in their force eat and drink, and what would they use to cultivate? They would fall apart in a short time. So, of course, they would not do it. The ghost teacher, however, had a shameless look on his face. He said, "If you are not willing, there is nothing I can do. The resources of the sword-seeking veranda are running low, and we cannot afford to pay for 100 years' worth of resources." Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were livid. After all, it was a dead end. What a waste of breath! Radiant Jade shouted coldly. He prepared to attack again, preparing to launch an all-out attack on the Glaze Ancient Cave. Xiao Lifeng shook his sleeves, swearing to take revenge on the sword-seeking veranda. The ghost teacher watched anxiously, his heart filled with regret. The current situation was that if those people really died because of the strange changes in the Glaze Ancient Cave, all their efforts would be in vain. Just as the two sides were in a dilemma, Su Yu suddenly stood up and said leisurely, "Sword-seeking veranda master, you should be responsible for all the resources. If you cannot afford it now, I don't mind if you write an IOU. IOU? Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were stunned. What nonsense was Su Yu talking about? How could a half-step Dowlord like him produce the resources of a force like theirs that had been accumulated for 100 years? Although the ghost teacher hated Su Yu, he had no choice but to suppress his anger at this moment. He said, "You can give us so many resources." Of course. Su Yu's heart moved. He let go of the 9-jade spiritual pearl and poured out all the resources within it. Ever since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts, the treasures he had seized, the relics and secret realms he had explored were innumerable. The wealth he had accumulated over the years had long reached an unimaginable level. Although the gains he made each time were insignificant compared to the resources of the Glaze civilization, they accumulated over time. Besides, he did not consume much himself, so he had accumulated quite a lot. Chapter 2338. Moreover, he still had a lot of primordial energy, which could also be considered a resource. Apart from that, the nursery of the supreme growing soil had nurtured many fairy plants that were no less than tens of millions of years old. Gathered together, it was barely enough for one of the three great influences to accumulate for 100 years. Looking at the endless amount of resources that were piling up, Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade were both shocked and overjoyed. One really couldn't judge a book by its cover. Su Yu was only a half-step pathmaster, yet he had managed to accumulate 100 years' worth of the faction's resources in one go. Even Xie Xiaoye, who knew Su Yu well, was dumbfounded. She never expected Su Yu to be so rich. The ghost master heaved a sigh of relief and said, "All right, use these resources first. I'll return them to you in 100 years. 100 years later, the era would be destroyed. Whether Su Yu would still be alive in this world was unknown. How could he repay the debt? Haha, do you think I'm a 3-year-old, sword-seeking pavilion master?" Su Yu sneered. "The era will be destroyed in 80 years. If you die, how are you going to pay me back?" The ghost master's little scheme did not escape Su Yu's eyes. Feeling guilty, he said, "You can't say that. 100 years later, the sword-seeking pavilion will still exist in this world. When that time comes." "Hey, why did you put them away?" Su Yu was putting the resources back into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He said calmly, "Since the sword-seeking pavilion can't give you the promissory note, the deal is off." Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Jade felt their hearts ache, but they couldn't bring themselves to ask Su Yu to give up these resources for free. They could only challenge the ghost master. "It seems that you are not sincere. If that's the case, there's no need to discuss anything. We'll just destroy the Glaze Ancient Cave and end it all." As they spoke, the two attacked again. The ghost master had no choice but to stop them. "All right, I'll write the promissory note. But Su Yu, what do you want? If you ask me to repay those resources in a few years or decades, I'm sure I can't." Su Yu's eyes flashed with wisdom. "It's very simple. You mortgage the entire sword-seeking pavilion to me now, and I'll lend you these resources. When you pay back the resources, I'll return the sword-seeking pavilion to you. Of course, the resources I lend you will be counted in, and I'll pay you 10% more every year. Hearing this, Ghost Master was furious. Ridiculous. Why should I mortgage the sword-seeking pavilion to you? Didn't this mean that the sword-seeking pavilion had become Su Yu's? Even if the debt was repaid 100 years later, with Su Yu's 100 years of operation, would the sword-seeking pavilion still be the same? He was afraid that he would lose both his money and his life. Su Yu shrugged. It's up to you. Seeing that the deal had failed, Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Jade glared at him and threatened, fine. Since you have chosen to ask the sword pavilion and do not want this batch of disciples who entered the glazed ancient cave, then we have nothing more to talk about. The two of them prepared to attack the glazed ancient cave again. Ghost Master's chest felt heavy and sullen. How did things develop like this? He carefully weighed whether he should ask Jian Xian or Hunting Shadow and the other prodigies. The end of the era was coming. If they gave up on Hunting Shadow and the others, who would return from the 8-star civilization and assist the sword-seeking pavilion in the future? But to give up on the sword-seek pavilion that had been in operation for so many years, wouldn't that be neglecting the essentials? The purpose of sending more prodigies to the 8-star civilization was to help the sword-seeking pavilion survive the great calamity of the world. It would be foolish to give up the sword-seeking pavilion for the sake of some prodigies. However, Ghost Master's eyes turned. If he mortgaged the sword-seeking pavilion to Su Yu, but Su Yu accidentally perished, wouldn't the sword-seeking pavilion come back? With that thought in mind, his thoughts suddenly became clear. What was there to hesitate about with such a simple solution? Fine, I agree. Now, in the name of the sword-seeking pavilion master, I will sign a contract with you, Ghost Master agreed readily. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly, secretly amused. He could guess what Ghost Master was planning with his toes. But would it be so easy to kill him? He had the holy mortal body, and the only one who could kill him was the Emperor of the Holy Mountain. He pretended to be completely unaware of the Ghost Master's plan and happily signed the contract with him. Ghost Master's oath was added into the contract. If he broke it, he would immediately be struck by lightning and turned into ashes. Therefore, there was no need to worry about Ghost Master breaking his promise. Under the witness of Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade, the sword-seeking pavilion, one of the 3 great influences of the colored glaze civilization, an ancient superpower, became Su Yu's. All the pupils, the mountain gate, the protective spell, and so on in the sword-seeking pavilion belonged to Su Yu. From now on, Su Yu was the new pavilion master of the sword-seeking pavilion. Witnessing this epic transaction with their own eyes, Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade felt a little surreal. With just 100 years of accumulated resources, he had bought the sword-seeking pavilion, and Su Yu, from a small fry in the beginning, had suddenly become the leader of the 3 great influences who were on par with them. All right, you guys get ready. Ghost Master took a deep look at Su Yu and thought to himself, enjoy your few remaining years of life. He threw the 100 years' worth of resources back into the flames that were about to be extinguished, and the flames surged again. Ghost Master immediately used his secret technique, and a passageway formed in the flames. Go in now, quickly, Xiao Lifeng and Bright Jade said. With Su Yu in the lead, a group of people quickly passed through the door and entered the glaze ancient cave. After a series of complicated space shuttles, Su Yu suddenly felt an astonishing spiritual pressure around him, and his body fell uncontrollably. His body's desolate power showed faint signs of being suppressed. When he opened his eyes and saw the scene before him, he could not help but be slightly surprised. What appeared before him was an exceptionally strange forest. The trees were extremely huge, and each one was like a giant tree that reached the heavens. All the people present added together were not even as big as a leaf in the book. The grass by the side of the road was ridiculously tall, reaching a height of 10,000 feet. The stones in the grass were also as big as small mountains. When he first entered this place, Su Yu felt as if he had been shrunk 100 times and thrown into a forest. All of a sudden, a rustling sound could be heard. Everyone looked up and saw a shadow looming over them. It was a grasshopper 10,000 feet in size. It flew over their heads and gnawed on the giant grass. The grasshopper was not some special creature like a wild beast, but just an ordinary grasshopper. It was only because of the special environment it grew in that it was abnormally huge. Hiss, hiss, just as the grasshopper flew over their heads, an afterimage that looked like red lightning suddenly flashed across the sky. The grasshopper flew backward at a speed 100 times faster than before. What followed was the sound of chewing. It was the sound of flesh and bones being gnawed on. Some of the people with lower cultivation levels and lacking in confidence felt a chill run down their spines. What was that? When the chewing sound stopped, the grass fell into a deathly silence. They were very familiar with that silence. It was the powerful creature crawling nearby, intimidating the surrounding creatures into not daring to make a move. Thinking back to the afterimage just now, everyone's hearts pounded. Everyone kept their composure, looking at their surroundings motionlessly, trying to cope with any changes. But not everyone could remain so calm. Huang Yang of the Bright Light Palace had cold sweat on his forehead. After a long stalemate, he could no longer endure the suffocating atmosphere and slowly retreated. As he moved, Xianhua shouted, "Don't move." But it was too late. A bolt of blood-red lightning swept over from the depths of the grass. With the speed of lightning, it swept Huang Yang away. Before Xianhua could stop it, Huang Yang was pulled into the depths of the grass. Chase! Xianhua drew the destiny spear in the air, holding it as she gave chase. Su Yu's gaze flickered. "Follow me, don't get separated." In an unknown territory, it was better to stick together. After chasing for 1,000,000 feet, they finally arrived in front of a giant creature. This was a terrifying creature that was 10 times the size of the grasshopper from before. It looked like an ordinary lizard, but it was tens of thousands of feet in size. At this moment, half of Huang Yang's body was in its mouth. The upper half had already been swallowed. Judging from the aura it was giving off, Huang Yang was already dead. Creak, the lizard raised its neck and swallowed Huang Yang whole, then chewed and ate him on the spot. The people of the Bright Light Palace were furious. After it finished eating the yellow ocean, the lizard stuck out its long tongue and looked at Su Yu and the others with its giant eyes. It was as if it was looking at a group of food that had come to its doorstep. Whoosh! A streak of red shot out from its mouth, as fast as lightning. Only then did they see that it was the lizard's tongue. This time, Xianhua was prepared. The destiny spear pierced through the air, instantly piercing through the lizard's tongue. The lizard, which had suffered great pain, began to struggle violently. Its huge body rolled rapidly, and at the same time, its tyrannical and thick tail kept beating the ground. The people from both sides were immediately beaten into a mess. Some were sent flying, while others were vomiting blood. Only Su Yu and the others, whose abilities were at the level of family masters, were unharmed. Attack! Kill the lizard! Xianhua drew another destiny spear, thrusting it toward its eyes. Kong Chu, Xie Xiaoye, Wu Xin Tai Yu, and the others all attacked. With the 4 of them working together, any pathmaster would find it difficult to defend against them. But the lizard in front of them was terrifyingly strong. When Xianhua's destiny spear came toward it, it closed its eyes, using a thin membrane to protect its eyes. The destiny spear was deflected away. Kong Chu and Xie Xiaoye's attacks on its back were like nails hitting a steel plate. They were completely ineffective. Only Wu Xin Tai Yu's attacks landed on its armpit, causing the lizard to cry out in pain. Even so, it was not seriously injured. In the outside world, such a thing would be unimaginable. Hiss, the lizard was infuriated. It swung its tail crazily, then jumped up and pounced toward the crowd. Everyone's heads darkened, as if the sky was really collapsing. "Get out of my way." At this moment, Su Yu's arms were covered by a layer of dragon scales, which turned into powerful dragon claws. As he slapped his arms upward, countless bolts of lightning flowed through his arms and into the lizard's body. Instantly, the giant lizard was sent flying back into the sky by Su Yu's arms. At the same time, under the terrifying lightning, the lizard was directly turned into an electric roasted lizard. Xianhua smiled bitterly as she put away the destiny spear. She looked enviously at Su Yu's unimaginably strong physique. In terms of physique, all of the people here combined couldn't compare to him. Chapter 2339. Moreover, Su Yu's power of thunder was not simple at all. They had never seen Su Yu use it before. Wu Xin Tai Constable was deep in thought. If he remembered correctly, a very powerful man of thunder had appeared not long ago. Gui Sha from the sword-seeking pavilion had been killed by his thunder as soon as he touched him. Could it be Su Yu? The crowd looked at Su Yu, full of admiration. Kong Chu sighed. With Brother Su, we will be safe. Only Princess Qian Yu was deeply opposed to Su Yu. She thought to herself that none of them had used their full strength just now. If they had, who wouldn't be able to kill a lizard? This lizard's body is full of spiritual energy. Xie Xiaoye walked forward, intending to peel off the lizard's skin. She had personally experienced the toughness of the lizard's skin. She could not break it even with her full strength. Everyone's eyes lit up as they went forward to collect the materials they needed. The giant lizard was quickly divided up by everyone. Not even the lizard meat was left. This meat can be used to replenish spiritual energy. It is comparable to elixirs. Biyun Hongxian cut off a small piece and tasted it. Her eyes lit up. Then, she slashed her sword several times and stored the meat in 7 or 8 space storage devices. She walked up to Su Yu and handed him 4. I've cut them into small pieces. 1 piece is just enough for you to replenish your power. Su Yu's feelings towards her were complicated. On the one hand, he was afraid of her father. On the other hand, he could not bring himself to hate Biyun Hongxian. Speaking of which, from the beginning until now, Biyun and Hongxian had always been impeccable in their conduct. It was just that she had been born as the golden-eyed Lungjuan's daughter. You don't have to worry about that. I've already prepared his spiritual meat. Xie Xiaoye interrupted, handing over a large space storage device. A pair of crystal-like eyes stared at Biyun and Hongxian with a hint of provocation and hostility. What the golden-eyed Langjun had done in the Heavenly Legacy Cave had made Xie Xiaoye very upset. Hence, she was especially wary of Biyun Hongxian. Biyun Hongxian looked at the beautiful and flawless Xie Xiaoye and smiled. She said desolately, "It was unnecessary on my part. Fairy, it would be impolite of me to refuse your kind offer." However, Su Yu stretched out his hand and took the few space storage devices. Biyun Hongxian's disappointed face flashed a bright and beautiful look of joy. Like a shy lotus, she smiled shyly, "Thank you." With that, he trotted away and returned to the bamboo hat man's side. "Do you really think that a house flower isn't as fragrant as a wildflower?" Xie Xiaoye put her hands on her waist and glared at Su Yu. Su Yu rolled his eyes. "Don't say things that will cause misunderstandings. If Biyun Hongxian is a wildflower, who is the houseflower?" Only then did Xie Xiaoye realize her mistake. She snorted lightly and changed the topic, saying, "This woman cannot be trusted. Don't forget about the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode. She must have an ulterior motive for coming here." Su Yu looked thoughtfully at Biyun and Hongxian, who had returned to the bamboo hat man's side like butterflies. Did she really come with a purpose? If everyone is ready, let's go. Xian Hua raised her voice and interrupted everyone's thoughts. She held a map in her hand and compared it with her own position to determine the direction. There are 2 ancient glazed platforms in the human character. The one closest to us is in the east. If everything goes smoothly, it will take us at least 10 days to get there, Xian Hua said. 10 days should be a conservative figure. They had just arrived, and they had already encountered such a dangerous lizard. There should be many more dangers ahead. Without further ado, they set off immediately. Little did they know, not long after they left, the entire sky darkened where they were. A pitch-black wild wolf came to the lizard's carcass. Compared to the wild wolf, the size of the carcass was less than 1/10 of the wild wolf. He lowered his head and ate the remains of the lizard. Then, a pair of scarlet eyes looked in the direction where Su Yu and the others had left. A low growl came from his throat, and he quickly chased after them. At the same time, Su Yu and the others traveled for several days and entered the depths of the forest. In the meantime, they had encountered no less than 100 living creatures. Without exception, all of them were extremely large. It would have been fine if they had encountered herbivorous living creatures, But if they had encountered carnivorous living creatures, it would have been difficult to avoid a great battle. After several days, everyone was exhausted. That night, they rested by a lake. In the lake, groups of family head-level fish were swimming in the water. A few carnivorous fish were constantly wandering around the shore, and it was obvious that they had targeted Suyu and the others. Unfortunately, they could not go ashore. Fortunately, we have a lot of people, and there are many experts among us. Otherwise, it would have been extremely difficult for us to reach this place, Xianhua said with a sigh. That's right. The danger of entering the human stage alone is simply unimaginable. While everyone was discussing this matter, Suyu was sitting in front of the bonfire, quietly studying the map that he had copied from Xianhua. Rather than calling it a map, it would be more accurate to call it a simple outline. The people of the Light Palace that entered this place did not have the ability to draw out the entire map. They could only draw out the route that they had originally passed through. Therefore, there was more than one path to the glazed ancient platform. While he was deep in thought, a gust of wind blew over, and the thick smell of blood assailed his nostrils. It also carried the natural aura of wild beast. Even without Suyu's reminder, everyone knew that the situation was anything but reassuring, so they all took precautions. Suyu had initially thought that it was just an ordinary family master-level wild beast, like the lizard that they had encountered earlier. However, as sharp as he was, he could sense that something was amiss. The school of fish that was swimming on the surface of the lake had all sunk. Even the carnivorous fish that had been eyeing them covetously had moved away from the shore, sinking rapidly. It was as if they had smelled a great threat. The only thing that could make them feel threatened in the water was a ferocious creature that was far more powerful than them. Retreat immediately. The intruder is no small matter, Suyu yelled. After experiencing dozens of battles, Suyu had already established a considerable amount of prestige among them. With Suyu's reminder, everyone did not hesitate for long, and they all started to retreat. However, just as they left, an extremely ferocious gust of wind suddenly assaulted them. The strength of the gust of wind could not be withstood unless one's physique was at the level of a family master or above. All of a sudden, Yang Hua and Qing Ling were sent flying like kites with a broken string. While they were still in the air, a pitch-black giant claw that blotted out the sky fiercely lashed out, killing them on the spot and turning them into a mist of blood. Everything had happened too suddenly, and they did not even have time to react. Xianhua's heart was bleeding. 2 more of her companions had been sacrificed. However, there was an indescribable fear in her heart. To be able to kill the 2 of them in the blink of an eye, the wild beast that had come this time was far more powerful than the lizard. Roar. Chapter 2340. Several people were sent flying on the spot. Suyu's expression changed abruptly, and he bellowed, "Split up and run." This wild wolf's cultivation was definitely not lower than a fish-dragon realm Dowlord. Suyu might be able to resist it by himself, but they could not. The group of people immediately understood Suyu's intention and fled in all directions. Each of them had a map. As long as they didn't run into any other dangers, they would eventually meet on the glazed ancient platform. Everyone quickly split up and used the strongest escape method they had to quickly leave. Hula. An earth-shattering sound came from behind them. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw an incomparably huge and terrifying grey wave cutting through the sky and rushing towards them. Because its size was too large and it was about to move too quickly, a single movement would tear apart the atmosphere, and the huge lake would also start to overturn rivers and seas. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and their scalps went numb as they fled frantically. Suyu was also extremely shocked. The only thing he had that could kill this thing was that bolt of lightning. But if it stayed on the wild wolves, it would mean that they would lose their strongest defense. This trump card should not be used unless it was a matter of life and death. Suyu chose an unmarked area and sped toward it. The ancestors of the Bright Palace had never been there, so no one knew what it was like. Whoosh! Suyu used the space domain to teleport away. The huge eyes of the wild wolf rolled around like 2 suns rotating in the sky. In the end, he shook his head and looked in Suyu's direction. Although it did not have a cultivation base and could not tell whose cultivation base was higher, its beastly instincts told it that Suyu was the strongest among them. With a low growl, it exerted force on its four legs and leaped toward Su Yu. Su Yu, who had just passed through the space territory and arrived hundreds of millions of trillion miles away, immediately felt an incomparable pressure behind him. Needless to say, that wild wolf must have caught up to him. That's fine too. Su Yu thought to himself. If I were to chase after someone else, apart from the heartless iron hunters, no one would be able to survive. As he thought about it, Su Yu released a large area of space behind him, forming layers upon layers of folded space. The wild wolf had no choice but to slow down. Otherwise, it would be sucked into the folded space. Even if it didn't die, it would lose a layer of skin. Seizing the opportunity, Su Yu once again used the space realm to escape. The wild wolf jumped over the folded space area and chased after him relentlessly. As for Su Yu, he used the same trick and kept a distance from the wild wolf. After a few days of chasing and chasing, Su Yu felt extremely tired. Fortunately, he had the spiritual meat prepared by Yun Hongxian. He ate a piece of it to maintain his condition. However, good times didn't last long. His spiritual flesh was being consumed too quickly, and in just a few days, he had already reached the bottom. If he didn't think of a way to get rid of it, he would be in danger. All of a sudden, Su Yu sensed an extremely strong fluctuation in front of him. It must be the territory of some kind of large wild beast. When he crossed over, he saw a group of wild boars that were as big as wild wolves resting in their territory. They only glanced at Su Yu's arrival and didn't care about him at all. Wild boars were actually extremely ferocious wild beasts. They were omnivores. Not only did they eat grass, but they also ate meat. Moreover, they were extremely aggressive. Especially when they were in groups, even the king of the jungle, tigers, and other top hunters had to be wary of them. However, Su Yu's body was too small, and in their eyes, he was even smaller than an ant. Thus, they didn't bother to attack him. Roar. The wild wolf let out a loud roar and strode over. In the end, when it saw the scene in front of it, it retracted its roar and slowly retreated with a low growl. Its eyes were filled with a shred of fear. The group of wild boars were all alarmed, and they got up in a panic to confront the wild wolf. One of the larger wild boars suddenly cried out and led the charge towards the wild wolf. The rest of the wild boars followed. The wild boars chased after the wild wolf in a chaotic manner. The scene was quite spectacular. The wild wolf clamped its tail and turned to escape. At this point, Su Yu could be considered to have gotten rid of it. Looking at the back of the wild wolf, Su Yu was confused. Compared to the wild wolf, his body was not even enough to fill the gap between its teeth. Why was it so persistent in chasing after Su Yu? Shaking his head, Su Yu was not in a hurry to leave. With the wild wolf's persistence, it might not be willing to give up. Perhaps it was only temporarily escaping and hiding in the dark to monitor Su Yu, waiting for him to leave the wild boar's nest again. Taking advantage of this rare moment of safety, Su Yu seized the time to rest. After a while, he finally recovered from his fatigue. Only then did he have the opportunity to look around. There were no treasures in the wild boar's nest. They were looking for food everywhere and would definitely not leave anything good in the nest. Moreover, the wild boar's feces were everywhere. It was extremely smelly. Suddenly, Su Yu felt something behind him. He looked behind him cautiously, but there was nothing. Slightly suspicious, Su Yu looked above his head. He saw a ferocious-looking wild beast, about the same size as him, with 8 long legs, leaping into the sky. Flea! Su Yu was stunned. This was the first time he had seen a flea that was about the same size as him. It had been prepared to launch a sneak attack on Su Yu, but was discovered by Su Yu. Hence, it used its shocking jumping ability to leap into the sky. Are you looking for death? Su Yu was amused and annoyed at the same time. He had actually been looked down upon by a flea. He rubbed his fingers and struck a bolt of lightning. The flea was instantly struck down from the sky, landing on the ground. Surprisingly, the flea's life force was exceptionally strong. It had not died yet. With the power of lightning, it could easily kill a lizard of that size, let alone such a tiny flea. Su Yu could not help but be surprised by the flea's life force. Just as Su Yu was about to end its life, he suddenly had a thought. It might be easy for it to deal with the flea, as he was already a small target and could easily spot the flea. But it was not the case for those huge wild beasts. If a group of fleas were to be thrown onto them, what would the consequences be? Just thinking about it made Suyu's entire body itch. That feeling would be excruciating. Suyu immediately caught the flea. But with only one flea, its usefulness was limited. At this moment, the wild boars returned without any success, lazily lying on the ground. Among them, the wild boar king was rolling around in the mud, rubbing the fleas off its body. But just as it jumped down, the flea jumped back up again. Suyu's eyes lit up. He jumped onto the back of the wild boar. Taking a quick look, he could not help but feel his scalp go numb. In the forest-like wild boar's fur, there were groups of fleas, all plunging their heads into the wild boar's flesh to suck its blood. Suyu shuddered. Luckily, the wild boars had thick skin and flesh. If a human was sucked like that, they would probably die from the itch. Next, Suyu walked forward. The fleas were sucking his blood vigorously and did not put up any resistance. Hence, Suyu easily caught them. At that moment, near the glazed ancient platform, Xianhua and the others who had been separated had basically reunited, except for Wuxin Tai who was still missing. I wonder how Suyu is doing. When I was escaping, I took a look. It seems like the wild wolves were chasing him in the same direction. Xie Xiaoye was worried. Xianhua comforted her, gently patting her shoulder. Believe in Suyu. He will be fine. Maybe he is struggling with the wild beasts now. Let's wait for him here patiently. Little did they know that Suyu was busy fighting with the fleas at that moment. He had caught all the fleas on the wild boar king's body. The latter was groaning in pleasure, rolling on the ground continuously to express its happiness. At the same time, after Suyu had caught all the fleas, he immediately caught the fleas on the other wild boars. After working for 4 to 5 days, he finally caught all the fleas. They were all placed in a space storage device, densely packed together. There were tens of thousands of them. Suyu hissed at the sight, hurriedly closing the space storage device. Rumble. At that moment, the wild boars, who had rested for several days, began to forage for food. They formed a group, and were practically invincible in the human realm. They were like a torrent, unstoppable. Everywhere they passed, they were eaten clean, leaving nothing behind. Suyu took the opportunity to steal some good things from the lairs of some powerful wild beasts that could not be found in the outside world. He had already exchanged all the resources for the promissory notes from the sword-seeking loft. Now was the time when he was at his poorest, so he naturally had to take the opportunity to plunder. After several days of foraging, Suyu had plundered a full basin. The resources he had lost had been replenished by 10 to 20%. It was obvious how abundant the resources here were. After the wild boars had eaten and drunk their fill, they prepared to return to their lairs. Suyu looked at the map. This place was not far from the glazed ancient platform, only a day's journey away. However, he released his heavenly eyes and looked down from the sky. As expected, he saw the thing he did not want to see the most. A wild wolf hiding in the bushes, motionless. It was still following him, waiting for Suyu to leave the herd of wild boars before taking action. This wild wolf. Could it be that I have something on me that attracts it? Suyu was extremely puzzled. Seeing that the wild wolf was unwilling to leave, Suyu had no choice but to think of another way to reach the glazed ancient platform. Suddenly, Suyu had a thought. He jumped onto the head of the wild boar king and cast a space barrier on both sides of its body. Because the barrier was not dangerous, the wild boar king did not resist. It only looked around uneasily before moving forward. The rest of the wild boars followed the herd. As such, Suyu passed through the space barrier and guided the wild boar king toward the glazed ancient platform. Suyu smiled at the wild wolf. If it had the ability, it could have charged over. If the wild wolf had intelligence, it would have vomited blood in anger. Just like that, a day later, Suyu successfully arrived near the glazed ancient platform. The closer he got to the ancient platform, the more restless the herd of wild boars became. When they were 100 million miles away from the ancient platform, they were no longer willing to move forward. Instead, They violently smashed through the space barrier and returned. Suyu used his heavenly eyes to look in the direction of the wild wolf. He realized that it was also retreating with its tail between its legs. Moreover, there were no traces of wild beasts near the glazed ancient platform. To be exact, there were no insects. I'm safe. Suyu let out a long sigh of relief and jumped down from the back of the wild boar king. He had just landed when he felt the auras of Xianhua and Xie Xiaoye sweeping over. Chapter 2341. It's a pity that Wuxin Iron Constable didn't follow us, Xie Xiaoye said regretfully. She had a good impression of this woman. Suyu said, "Don't worry, she'll be fine." Others might not know, but Suyu knew the true strength of Wuxin Iron Constable. The black tortoise on her had caused the divine nine-dragon cauldron to vibrate. With that, she wouldn't have to fear anyone in the human realm. Moreover, Wuxin Iron Constable's many years of hunting criminals meant that she would be fine. Suyu believed that she had discovered something and given up on meeting them halfway, acting alone. Moreover, rather than worrying about her, Suyu felt that he should be more worried about Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat. They didn't come either. Golden-eyed Lang Jun, was this also part of your plan? Suyu thought to himself. The group waited for a few more days, but Wuxin Iron Constable, Biyun Hongxian, and the others didn't come. I told you that woman can't be trusted. Xie Xiaoye was getting impatient. Suyu had been chased by the wild wolf and wasted so much time, but he still managed to make it here. If Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat really wanted to meet up with them, they would have arrived long ago. They would either have died in an accident or gone on their own. Forget it, let's go. Suyu gave up waiting. There were 6 of them: Suyu, Xie Xiaoye, Xianhua, Xianyin, Kongchu, and Princess Qianyu. Xianhua said, "The sword-seeking pavilion arrived half a day earlier than us and didn't encounter that wild wolf. They should have occupied the ancient glaze platform long ago. We will inevitably have to fight for it." Everyone's heart sank. They had lost many people, so they would be at a disadvantage if they fought the sword-seeking pavilion. Everyone was mentally prepared. Unexpectedly, when they arrived, there was no one on the ancient glaze platform. What they saw was a huge bronze platform with a circumference of 10,000 feet. There were many ancient runes and words carved on it. Many mysterious paths crisscrossed, as if there were 3,000 great paths and billions of small paths. It was profound and indescribable. At first glance, it made people face the way of heaven, unable to extricate themselves. Suyu was also trapped. He felt his surroundings darken, and his whole body was about to fall into it. Right at this moment, he returned to his senses in time, and he suddenly shouted with the voice of a dragon. Everyone present instantly became vigilant, and they were greatly astonished. They had only taken a glance at it, and they had almost fallen into it. Looking at the skeletons around them that had been dead for who knew how many years, everyone understood that they might not have died from killing each other. It was very likely that their souls had been trapped here and had been worn away by time. Don't look at the symbols, tracks, and words on it. They were left behind by the almighty beings of the previous era, Suyu shouted. He was proficient in the languages of the 10,000 races, but he didn't know a single word on it. What was even stranger was that he had seen a similar platform in the human demon's memory. In the last great era, this object wasn't some ancient glazed platform, but rather called the evil crossing lotus seat. Its purpose was to resist the destruction of an era. The nightmare crossing lotus throne was created by the combined efforts of 30,000 great beings in the world. It was the culmination of their entire life's efforts and the exhaustion of the foundation of billions of civilizations. It was an artifact that allowed them to overcome misfortune in a hopeless situation. Due to its resemblance to a magical artifact, it was also known as the Lotus Throne of Nightmares. Suyu's heart thumped wildly. In the memories of the human demon, even the human ancestor had appeared to guide the construction of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne. More than half of that era's matchless powerhouses participated, working together to create a magic treasure that could survive the destruction of that era. This object could be said to be the #1 magic treasure of the previous era. However, judging from the fall of the human ancestor and the disappearance of the matchless powerhouses, they had failed. The nightmare-crossing lotus seat had failed to resist the destruction of the era. Everything had been destroyed. The ancient Emperor Master, the mighty kings of heaven and earth, and the 10 sacred ancestors had all been annihilated in the dust of history. Only the remnants of the nightmare-crossing lotus seat remained, recounting the glory of the past. A wave of desolation and desolation swept across his heart. It was as if he could see countless ancestors crying out in despair, struggling in the face of destruction, fighting against the fate of the ancient reincarnation, letting out roars of unwillingness that shook the firmament universe. However, the sacred mountain was merciless, and they could not escape the fate of destruction. They were like moths flying into a flame. Emperor of the sacred mountain, your immortality is the eternal hatred of countless Holy Spirit. Su Yu's emotions surged, and he was overwhelmed with emotions. If one day he could set foot on the sacred mountain, he would definitely slaughter all the emperors and open the way for the world. As if the oath in Su Yu's heart had triggered something, the giant ancient bronze platform began to creak with difficulty. Shreds of shocking, unique aura leaked out from it. Su Yu did not feel anything, but Xian Hua and the others were wild with joy. This is the mysterious aura that can enhance the cultivation of the Pathmasters. Xie Xiaoye was the closest, and she was the first to feel it. Xian Hua was second only to her, and she could not help but be overjoyed. How can there be so much? According to the records, only a shred of it is released every 10 days. There were more than 1,000 shreds of this mysterious aura. Such a large amount of mysterious aura was probably more than the legendary word heaven. They did not have the time to think about why this was happening, and they all leaped up to absorb the mysterious aura. Su Yu and Princess Chen Yu were both half-step pathmasters, so they could not absorb the mysterious aura. Su Yu was fine, but Princess Chen Yu was envious, but there was nothing she could do. Because her 9 divine body could not achieve the upper class for a long time, she could not break through to the Pathmaster level. Thinking of this, she could not help but look at Su Yu, and an inexplicable resentment rose in her heart. If Su Yu had continued to train her 9 divine body, she might have become a Pathmaster by now. On the one hand, she did not admit that Su Yu had trained her 9 divine body, and she claimed that it was all because of her. On the other hand, when she was not good enough, she blamed Su Yu for not doing his best. Su Yu had always kept a respectful distance from such a self-centered woman. Hey, my father said there is a place in the word earth that might be helpful for my 9 divine body, Princess Chen Yu said as she bit her lip. Oh, Su Yu said calmly, without looking at her. Princess Chen Yu waited for a while, and when she found that Su Yu had nothing else to say, she said, "My father said you must take me there." Her tone was like it was the right thing for Su Yu to do. Really? He didn't tell me, Su Yu said calmly. He did not know where Princess Chen Yu got the news that there was such a place in the word earth. But he was sure that it was not the monarch who said it. If the monarch knew there was such a place, he would have looked for Su Yu and asked him to protect Princess Chen Yu. There was no reason for him to let his daughter tell him at the last moment. Moreover, his tone was so stiff. My father said it. Princess Chen Yu repeated. Su Yu said indifferently, then let him tell me. You. Princess Chen Yu was annoyed. After staring at Su Yu for a long while, Princess Chen Yu stomped her feet and snorted, I will go by myself. Su Yu turned a deaf ear to her words. He did not care about her life or death. Princess Chen Yu left angrily. Su Yu, when I become the Pathmaster, you will be the first one I will step on. As she spoke, she left alone and looked around until she came to a remote corner. Whoosh! The giant leaves in front of her suddenly parted, and Biyun Hongxian and the man in the bamboo hat walked out. The man in the bamboo hat stepped forward and said, Su Yu did not come. He refused to come. Princess Chen Yu said with a gloomy face. The man in the bamboo hat sighed, sounding extremely disappointed. Forget it, there will be a chance sooner or later. Let's go and get there as soon as possible, the man in the bamboo hat said. It turned out that when Princess Chen Yu was on her way to the ancient glaze platform, she met the man in the bamboo hat and Biyun Hongxian. They told Princess Chen Yu that there was a mysterious spiritual spring in the word earth, which could help all kinds of constitutions that could not be broken through to the Pathmaster level. They were about to head there. Princess Chen Yu was immediately tempted, and she took the initiative to ask them to bring her along. The man in the bamboo hat agreed readily, saying that he hoped that Princess Chen Yu could invite Suyu over due to the danger of the word earth. In the end, not only did they fail to invite Suyu, but they were also rejected by him. That's right, we gave him a chance and he did not want it, so don't blame us. Princess Chen Yu snorted. She did not notice that Biyun Hongxian, although normal on the outside, had not said a word. She also did not notice that in the boundless sky, a giant eye was slowly disappearing. I told you that her information came from another source, Suyu said. He knew that something was amiss, so he paid more attention to it. He did not expect the man in the bamboo hat to bewitch Princess Chen Yu. Suyu's eyes turned slightly, and he secretly chased after him. He was not worried about Princess Chen Yu's safety, but he wanted to see who the man in the bamboo hat was and what he wanted. This man was hostile to him, and he had tricked Princess Chen Yu, and it seemed like he had done something to Biyun Hongxian. Moreover, he was the golden-eyed Lungjuan's man, so Suyu had to be careful. Moreover, Xian Hua and the other three had already entered a state of cultivation, so Suyu could have left without any trouble. In a few breaths, the man in the bamboo hat was far away. They were using the extremely fast Heavenly Legacy warship. Suyu chased for a while, but he was about to lose him and was about to use the space realm. Creak. Suddenly, the sound of space tearing came from behind Suyu. Suyu's heart skipped a beat, and he threw a punch behind him without hesitation. However, his fist was held by a warm, delicate, and soft hand. At the same time, a familiar voice whispered, "It's me." Turning his head, he saw that it was the missing Wuxin Iron Constable. She was riding the gold and silver horse, traveling through space. At this moment, she was bending down to receive Suyu's punch, lest it hurt the gold and silver horse. "Are you also following the man in the bamboo hat and Biyun Hongxian?" Suyu immediately realized why the Wuxin Iron Constable had disappeared. The Wuxin Iron Constable retracted her hand, and said, "Aren't you the same? Get on the horse." Suyu did not refuse. Once he used the space realm, it would cause a huge commotion. He believed that the Wuxin Iron Constable must have noticed this, so she showed up in time to stop Suyu from using the space realm. Suyu leaped onto the gold and silver horse, and sat behind the Wuxin Iron Constable. "Hold on tight." She released the reins, and two beams of light shot out from the eyes of the gold and silver horse, opening a crack in the space. Suyu was immediately hit by a strong spatial impact, and his body became unstable. He was about to fall. Chapter 2342. The heartless Iron Constable, who was riding the gold and silver horse, stiffened. But thinking that the person behind him was Suyu, she felt at ease. She rode the gold and silver horse into the space and chased after him secretly. A few days later, the man in the bamboo hat came to the end of the human realm, a huge waterfall that went against the sky. Ordinary waterfalls flowed from top to bottom, but this one went against the sky. The end of the waterfall reached the depths of the sky, and a huge gap could be vaguely seen. That was the Earth realm. The lowest level of beasts was the fish-dragon realm, which was the level of that wild wolf. It would be difficult to encounter any of them. But the man in the bamboo hat seemed to be extremely confident and fearless. He leaped along the waterfall toward the gap in the sky. After a few leaps, he successfully entered. Swoosh! The heartless Iron Constable broke through the space and appeared in front of the waterfall. "We have to follow him," the heartless Iron Constable said calmly. But just as the gold and silver horse was about to step onto the waterfall, a huge carp jumped out from it. It came down from the gap in the sky and swam back and forth in the waterfall, crashing into the waterfall. With a casual sweep of its tail, it cut off the waterfall. A carp of the fish-dragon realm. The heartless Iron Constable pulled the reins and frowned. A beast of such a level would only appear in the Earth realm. Why would it come to this waterfall? And this carp had been in the waterfall all this time. Why did it not attack when the man in the bamboo hat entered, but it appeared to stop them when they were about to enter? This is troublesome. The man in the bamboo hat should have the ability to control beasts. Suyu's brows slightly shrank. He thought of a person, the beast slave king of the mist forest. He was an expert in controlling beasts. However, He usually controlled them through talismans. The carp in front of him did not do so. It was more willing to obey orders. If there was no other way, he could only use the 9-5 Heaven's Frost Needle to injure it and see if it would escape. Roar. However, at this moment, Su Yu heard a familiar roar behind him. Su Yu's expression changed slightly. What a haunting ghost. That roar belonged to none other than the wild wolf in the fish dragon realm. Su Yu thought it had given up on chasing him, but it was still following him secretly. In the past, Su Yu did not understand why it was so obsessed with him. But now, he understood. It was a secret order from the man in bamboo hat. Otherwise, with Su Yu's size, he would be like a flea to a wild wolf. Was there a need to chase after him relentlessly? The only reason was that it had made Su Yu its target. That man in the bamboo hat really does have a deep grudge against me. Previously, Su Yu had caught a glimpse of hatred in his opponent's eyes. Now, it seemed like there was more than just friction between them. Instead, it was a blood feud. What a good plaited bamboo hat man. In that case, there is no need for me to feign civility anymore. Su Yu's eyes glowed with a cold light. The heartless Iron Hunter looked at the persistent wolf behind him and understood that it was not an ordinary person. He sighed and said, "The people around golden-eyed Langjun are indeed not ordinary people." She had spent quite some time with Xie Xiaoye, and she had asked the golden-eyed playboy for relevant information. She completely understood what had happened in the Heavenly Legacy Cave abode. Su Yu was deeply convinced. First, there was the mysterious Star Lady, and now there was the mysterious man in bamboo hat, who could control wild beast. In front of him was a carp blocking his way, and behind him was a wild wolf chasing after him. Su Yu wanted to use the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle to kill one of them first. The heartless Iron Constable hesitated for a moment before saying, "Step back." Su Yu's eyes flashed. He remembered the black tortoise in the heartless Iron Hunter's hands. As expected, the heartless Iron Hunter clenched her fist, and a golden black tortoise appeared in her palm. As soon as it appeared, it emitted the aura of the King of Beast. The wild wolf, which was about to pounce, was extinguished as if it had been doused with cold water. Like a bullied wild dog, it tucked its tail between its legs and let out a grunt. Then, it turned and burrowed into the tall forest, escaping. As for the carp, it was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. It hurriedly waved its huge tail and fled along the waterfall back to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the two fish dragon realm wild beasts fled in fright. What was noteworthy was that the two wild beasts did not have spiritual intelligence. They acted purely on instinct. Even so, they were still scared out of their wits. It was obvious that the black tortoise was extraordinary. It's not your first time seeing it. What's so interesting about it? The heartless Iron Hunter said indifferently as she put it away. Su Yu chuckled. Back then, she had been able to defeat the heartless Iron Hunter because she had prevented the heartless Iron Hunter from activating the black tortoise. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to determine the victor. Giddy up. The heartless Iron Hunter rode the gold and silver horse unimpeded through the waterfall and into the gap. As soon as they entered, a whiff of the unique aura of the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne hit them in the face. The Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne of the human realm had basically fallen into a state of stagnation. It would only occasionally emit a very weak aura. However, the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne here was different. It could actually maintain a certain amount of unique aura. It was obvious that it had not been completely destroyed. Su Yu, do you know why the wild beasts here can maintain such a huge form and survive for so many years? The heartless Iron Hunter suddenly asked. Su Yu had been curious about this before, but now he basically understood. It was the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Throne that could maintain such a unique ecosystem for so long. It was precisely because of the unique aura emitted at that time that the plants and animals grew to such an enormous size. That was why such a spectacle was created. Perhaps it's because of the so-called ancient glaze platform. Su Yu pretended not to know. Yes, the heartless Iron Hunter said. It is indeed the ancient glaze platform. But do you know that it has another use? Huh? Su Yu said calmly, what are you trying to say? I'm trying to say that the golden-eyed Lungjuan's goal is most likely the ancient glaze platform, the heartless Iron Hunter said. According to my understanding, there are a large number of great paths within the ancient glaze platform. If used as a weapon, it would be enough to destroy heaven and earth, enough to threaten the entire west regions. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. If he had not coincidentally obtained information about the nightmare-crossing Lotus Throne, he might not have understood the heartless Iron Hunter's meaning. Since I happened to come across this matter, of course I can't just stand by and watch. The heartless Iron Hunter was the same as always. She hated evil and would never tolerate evil. As she spoke, her crystal-like eyes turned to look at Su Yu. Are you willing to help me? Su Yu said without hesitation, as I said before, if you need any help, just let me know. The heartless Iron Hunter looked pleased. I won't ask for your help for free. Regardless of whether it succeeds or not, I will tell you about the great divine throne of heaven and earth. If it had been something else, Su Yu might not have cared. But the great divine throne of heaven and earth was the key to Su Yu becoming a pathmaster. Has it reappeared? Su Yu's eyes flashed. The heartless Iron Hunter nodded affirmatively. Yes, after lying dormant for more than 10 years, it has reappeared. Su Yu understood that all these years, the great divine throne of heaven and earth had been recovering from the injuries he had inflicted upon it. Now that it had reappeared, it must have gone to find Zhong Wushuang. It appeared just in time. If he could become a pathmaster before entering the 8-star civilization, he would have more confidence in the trip to the Sinful Lady Palace. Chapter 2343. He could only hope that the heavenly god throne would not be taken by someone else. Even without the heavenly throne of heaven and earth, I will fulfill my promise. Su Yu said slowly. He had once promised the heartless Iron Hunter that he would help him deal with the golden-eyed playboy, so he would naturally not go back on his word. However, Su Yu looked at her deeply for a while. It could be said that she was well informed. Su Yu hadn't heard any news about the divine throne of heaven and earth in the Nightless Empire, but the reclusive heartless Iron Arrester knew a lot about it. Apart from that, she had also vaguely grasped the truth behind the glazed ancient platform. Su Yu was very curious as to where the information of the heartless Iron Hunters came from. It was impossible for a person who lived in seclusion to obtain so much important information for no reason. However, he didn't expose her and said, "Do you have a specific plan?" "No, if you have, you can tell me," the heartless Iron Constable said with a deeper meaning. At present, it was not clear what the man in bamboo hat was going to do, so Iron Arrester could not make a plan. I don't have enough information, so I can't even talk about a detailed plan. Su Yu's eyes flickered. However, I do have a plan that isn't really a plan. The corners of the heartless Iron Constable's mouth curled up into a faint smile, as if saying, I knew you would have a way. Since you guessed that his objective was the glazed ancient stage, why should we chase after him blindly? Su Yu asked calmly. The heartless Iron Arrester pondered. You mean to go to the human ancient glazed platform and wait there? She had also thought of this method, but it couldn't be considered a plan. She was a little disappointed. It seemed like Su Yu wasn't always good at setting things up. No. Unexpectedly, Su Yu shook his head lightly. What I mean is, why don't we snatch the glazed ancient platform first? Do you want to move the tree and wait for the hare? The heartless Iron Constable's eyelashes fluttered, and he tilted his head slightly to look at Su Yu. He was a little confused by Su Yu's bold and imaginative words. The golden-eyed Lungjuan's scheme lies in the glazed ancient stage, so we can just take drastic measures. Su Yu was like a spectator who was not involved in the matter, and he revealed the essence of the matter. The heartless Iron Arrester finally understood Su Yu's meaning and said, Your thoughts are really hard to fathom. She had been hunting down criminals for a long time, so she was experienced and quick-witted. However, in front of Su Yu, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. As he stared at Su Yu, the heartless Iron Arrester felt a sense of suffocation. He couldn't help but rejoice inwardly. Fortunately, Su Yu was an upright person and wasn't an evil person. Otherwise, she would have a headache if he became her enemy. Let's go. With the ability of the gold and silver horses, it won't be a problem to surpass them. The heartless Iron Constable nodded and rode the gold and silver horse. Although they encountered many fish-dragon realm beasts along the way, the heartless iron catcher had the golden tortoise in his hand, so they were safe and sound. 10 days later, they overtook the man in bamboo hat and arrived at the end of the heavy man. As expected, the bad riddle lotus throne that was still in operation came into view. There were many wounds on his body, and many of the mysterious trajectories had disappeared without a trace. However, it was still spinning on its own, releasing a weak, unique aura. What surprised Su Yu was that there were a few figures sitting cross-legged on the nightmare crossing lotus seat. Hunting shadow, ghost eye? Su Yu felt relieved. It was no wonder that he did not see anyone from the Sword Seek Pavilion after entering this place. It turned out that they had abandoned the heavy man and come to the heavy man, which was the heavy man compared to the initial number of people. The people from the Sword Seek Pavilion had suffered some losses. From the initial 7 or 8 people, there were only 4 left. If they knew that the special aura they had obtained after paying such a huge price was not even as much as the heavy man, which had been reactivated, how would they feel? What if there are people? The heartless iron constable asked. Chase them all away. Su Yu shook his head slightly. That would alert them too much. After thinking for a while, Su Yu said, "Can you lend me the golden tortoise?" The heartless iron constable hesitated. She had always been straightforward, but after thinking it over, she said decisively, "All right. However, you must not leave my sight." Su Yu felt an indescribable sense of relief. Su Yu knew what kind of treasure the golden tortoise was. It must be the most important item of the heartless iron constable. However, she was still willing to lend it to Su Yu. It was evident how much she trusted Su Yu. A warm current slowly flowed through his heart. The heartless iron constable's heartfelt trust and tacit understanding reminded Su Yu of the time when he had first met Xia Jingyu. There was a type of friend in the world that could be called a beauty. The heartless iron constable was one of them. However, Su Yu really only saw her as a friend. He had no other thoughts. There were already 2 unbearable feelings in his life, and he could not bear any more. "Here you go." The heartless iron constable took the golden tortoise and said, "This thing is very heavy. Be careful." Really? Su Yu did not dare to be careless. His right hand turned into a dragon claw and grasped the golden tortoise. Unexpectedly, it was not as heavy as he had imagined. Instead, it was light. Moreover, the expected cold metallic feeling did not appear. Instead, it was a little warm, as if the golden tortoise was transmitting a faint heat. Su Yu's arm returned to human form. He shook it in his hand and was slightly surprised. Fortunately, it is not very heavy. The heartless iron constable, who was beside him, had a look of surprise on her face. She said, "This thing weighs 1,080,000,000 pounds, which is equivalent to an entire 4-star civilization. Only those who have recognized it by blood can carry it easily." Su Yu also found it strange and tried to put it on the ground. As soon as the golden tortoise's feet touched the ground caved in deeply. Su Yu immediately lifted it up. Just as he was feeling puzzled, the divine 9-dragon cauldron in his arms moved restlessly. The 9 flying dragons in his arms let out a dragon roar that only Su Yu could hear. It seemed very excited. The divine 9-dragon cauldron had reacted again. Su Yu was even more surprised. What kind of treasure was this golden tortoise? "Is there something in your arms?" The heartless iron constable was observant. She faintly caught a glimpse of the vibration in Su Yu's arms. Su Yu thought about it. In the end, he did not mention the divine 9-dragon cauldron. He said, "Nothing. Let's go." The 2 of them left the glazed ancient platform and headed for a huge basin they had passed by earlier. Hundreds of poisonous snakes and giant pythons with the strength of the fish-dragon realm lived in the basin. Su Yu held the golden tortoise in his left hand and the evil king pearl in his right. Their appearance startled the poisonous snakes and giant pythons. They stuck out their tongues and stared greedily at Su Yu and the heartless iron constable. Su Yu stretched out the golden tortoise, imitating the heartless iron constable's movements. He released the golden tortoise's aura of the king of beasts. The heartless iron constable said, "Let me do it. Only I can activate it." She reached out and grabbed the golden tortoise's head. However, Her arm froze in midair. The golden tortoise was emitting the aura of the king of beasts. It seemed to be even stronger than when Heartless Iron Constable held it in her hand. The poisonous snakes and giant pythons below immediately retreated back into their snake holes. They were extremely afraid. The Heartless Iron Constable's pupils shrank. She could not believe it. How could Suyu control her own treasure? She even had a feeling that Suyu had swapped the golden tortoise with a fake one in his hand. Suyu did not think too much about it. He activated the Evil King Pearl with his right hand. A blood-red rune appeared around the Evil King Pearl. It was the rune that the Beast Slave King used to control the savage beasts. The Evil King Pearl could replicate all attacks. This type of beast taming technique was also applicable. Swoosh. The talisman chose a venomous python that was tens of thousands of feet long and entered its glabella. However, the rune made by the Beast Slave King could only control Pathmasters at the master level. The poisonous python was at the higher level of the fish dragon realm. It could not do anything to it. What Suyu wanted was not to control it, but to communicate with it. When the rune entered, a spiritual connection immediately appeared between the two. Suyu could hear the inner thoughts of the poisonous python. Fear, fear, fear. This was the portrayal of the poisonous python's inner thoughts. It only had instincts. Suyu said through the spiritual connection, "Listen to my command. I will let you go later. Otherwise, I will eat you." As he spoke, he shook the golden tortoise. To the Heartless Iron Constable's disbelief, the golden tortoise seemed to cooperate with Suyu. It immediately released an even more powerful pressure, which made the poisonous python even more afraid. "Let's go," Suyu said as he held the golden tortoise. The poisonous python did not dare to resist. It obediently followed Suyu to the glazed ancient platform. "Go, drive away the people up there." The poisonous python looked at the glazed ancient platform with some fear. It was very afraid of the aura of the great path released from it. It hesitated and did not dare to go up. "Huh!" Suyu furrowed his brows. The poisonous python had no choice but to climb onto the glazed ancient platform. Although Hunting Shadow, Ghastly Shadow, and the two members of the Nine Swords Pavilion were in seclusion, they had left a trace of their souls outside. They immediately sensed the approach of a poisonous python of the fish dragon realm. They were so frightened that they fled from the glazed ancient platform. Even Shadow Hunter was extremely fearful. He said in a hoarse voice, "What's going on? Why would the wild beasts here dare to ascend the ancient glazed platform?" However, the poisonous python couldn't care less. Under Suyu's control, it chased after them all over the place and went further and further away. Suyu reacted quickly and said, "Quick! Take the ancient glazed platform away." When the Heartless Iron Arrester came back to his senses, he immediately joined hands with Suyu to lift the ancient glazed platform. Who would have thought that they would not be able to move the glazed platform at all? The ancient platform was engraved with thousands of great Daos. Lifting the ancient platform meant lifting thousands of great Daos. With their strength, it was naturally difficult for them to succeed. Suyu looked at the golden Xuanwu in his hand and asked the Heartless Iron Arrester, "Does this thing have any other uses?" He had seen it with his own eyes. This thing had an extremely high defensive power and could also launch unknown mysterious attacks. "I can only use a part of it. I have yet to master the rest of its abilities," the Heartless Iron Arrester said regretfully. "Is that so?" Suyu shook it a little disappointedly. "I thought you were an earth-based treasure, so you should have infinite strength. If the golden Xuanwu could not be used, then he could only use the divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron to see if he could absorb it into the divine cauldron." In the end, the Xuanwu actually came back to life. Its head moved and its limbs flailed, indicating for Suyu to put it down. "Who are you?" The Heartless Iron Arrester could no longer describe her feelings. She stared at Suyu and asked. The golden Xuanwu had always been a living creature. She knew that. However, even she could rarely make the golden Xuanwu move even for a moment. But Suyu's words had made the golden Xuanwu move on its own. Chapter 2344. Suyu was speechless. "Why don't you ask your precious turtle?" I don't know what's going on either. He lowered his body and placed the turtle on the ground. The golden tortoise slowly crawled under the ancient glazed platform. Rumble, then, with a loud bang, the glazed ancient platform that bore the weight of thousands of great dows was forcefully carried by an inconspicuous black tortoise. With the weight of the myriad great dows, only the sacred mountain's son of heaven would be able to withstand it. However, the strength of this Xuanwu could be said to be extreme. Su Yu was slightly taken aback, and said, "Come to my cavern." It let go of the 9-jade spiritual pearl and let the black tortoise crawl in. As expected, the golden Xuanwu obediently crawled over. The heartless iron constable felt uncomfortable. He squatted down and said, "Let me do it." She took out a cavern world and placed it in front of Black Tortoise. However, Xianwu ignored her and walked straight into Su Yu's 9-jade spiritual pearl. With the weight of the ancient glaze platform, there was simply no cavern world that could contain it. Apart from the eye of the heavenly Tao's death eye, it could even withstand so much apocalyptic dust, let alone the glazed ancient platform. This was why Su Yu had allowed him to enter the 9-jade spiritual pearl. However, his actions seemed to have caused the heartless iron hunter to misunderstand. She was in low spirits, and as she looked at Su Yu with a complicated expression, she did not utter a single word. Su Yu did not find it funny. After all, if someone could control his divine 9-dragon cauldron and the divine 9-dragon cauldron had run away with someone else, he would not be able to remain calm either. My cavern world is a special object. Only it can support the glazed ancient platform. Su Yu held the heartless iron arrest's jade-like palm and stuffed the 9-jade spiritual pearl into her hand. I'll let you keep it for now. The 9-jade spiritual pearl had been refined by Su Yu many times, so it had long belonged to him. Without Su Yu's consent, the heartless iron arrester could not open it even if he took it away. At this moment, the heartless iron constable realized that he had lost his composure. Indeed, with the weight of the ancient glaze platform, the ordinary cavern world that he had just taken out would immediately collapse. Her actions were not in line with her usual indifferent temperament. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel slightly embarrassed. He sighed and said, "Why do I always lose face in front of you?" No matter who she was in front of, she was always successful in every endeavor. She had always presented herself in an otherworldly manner. Su Yu was the only one who had been defeated by him the first time they had met, and it was only because he had shown mercy that he had managed to escape. Now, he had once again seen his embarrassed side. She could not help but sigh. It's only human nature, so why would you say that it's embarrassing? Su Yu let go of her hand. The heartless iron arrester grabbed his hand again and stuffed the 9-jade spiritual bead back into his hand. "Mr. Su, you have the demeanor of a gentleman. I, Leng Wuxin, am too petty." She could feel that the 9-jade spiritual pearl was extraordinary, and it probably contained something important to Su Yu. Even so, he could still trust her unconditionally. On the other hand, she was at a disadvantage. Su Yu chuckled, no longer hesitating. He took it and said, "Let's leave this place quickly." The two of them immediately left and hid in the distance to observe. Hunting Shadow and the others were tormented by the poisonous python for a day or two before they finally got rid of it and returned to the ancient glazed platform. So unlucky, disturbing our precious cultivation. The light around Ghost Eye's body dimmed, as if he had suffered quite a bit in the hands of the poisonous python. Hunting Shadow's expression was solemn. "This snake is suspicious, everyone be careful." The word heart was still hanging by the side of his mouth when he stood rooted to the spot, staring unblinkingly at the empty yellow land in front of him. Ghost Eye and the other two were equally stunned. Where is the ancient glazed platform? Ghost Eye looked around, wondering if he had found the wrong place. Hunting Shadow's body was pitch black, as if he was a shadow. At this moment, his body was glowing with a black light. It was unknown whether he was excited or angry. Who is it? Who did this? Thinking of the giant python that had appeared out of nowhere, Hunting Shadow knew that someone was behind this. Suddenly, Hunting Shadow suppressed his voice and shouted, "All of you, hide. Someone is coming." The four of them immediately dodged into the darkness. Fortunately, Su Yu and the heartless iron arrester had hidden far away, or they would have bumped into them. Whoosh, 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 not long after, 3 auras arrived. They were the Bamboo Hat Man, Biyun Hongxian, and Princess Chen Yu, who had arrived later. After the Bamboo Hat Man landed, he looked around, muttering to himself, "Where is the ancient glazed platform? According to the map, it should be nearby. Could they have found the wrong place?" As the Bamboo Hat Man thought, he led the 2 ladies into the air once again, preparing to search the surroundings. In the end, they had just moved when Hunting Shadow and the other 3 flew out from the darkness, surrounding the 3 of them. "Great! It's you!" Hunting Shadow shouted. The Bamboo Hat Man looked around furtively, and Hunting Shadow misunderstood them as the culprits. Ghost Shadow's huge eyes flashed, his heart filled with suspicion. If it was really the Bamboo Hat Man's doing, then they had achieved their goal. Why would they return here? But looking at Hunting Shadow in front of him, Ghost Shadow was strangely silent, not waking him up. The Bamboo Hat Man was caught off guard, saying, "There's an ambush, defend." Biyun Hongxian was expressionless, her hands hidden in her sleeves, golden light swimming in the depths of her eyes. As for Princess Chen Yu, she immediately released the 9 divine body, her heart extremely nervous. They were facing the strongest people in the Sword Seeker Pavilion. How could they meet here? "Stop playing dumb," Hunting Shadow said. "Tell me, where did you hide the ancient glaze platform?" The Bamboo Hat Man was curious about the location of the ancient glaze platform, and was slightly confused by his words. But then he understood that the people of the Sword Seeker Pavilion had hidden the ancient glaze platform on purpose, lying in ambush here, looking for an excuse to attack. The people of the 9 Swords Pavilion had used similar methods many times in Lioli City. "The thief is calling the thief," the Bamboo Hat Man said coldly. "People of the 9 Swords Pavilion, I don't care how you behave in front of the people of the Palace of Light and the Sleepless Empire. But in front of me, I advise you not to seek your own death." The Bamboo Hat Man's tone was unusually arrogant, looking down on the strongest people of the 9 Swords Pavilion. Hunting Shadow sneered. "I haven't heard anyone speak to me like that in a long time." With his abilities, only Xian Hua could stand a chance against him in the entire colored glaze civilization, and he would win more often than not. He couldn't believe that he was being threatened by a nameless person. He wondered if Su Yu had destroyed a third of his soul, which was why he was being looked down upon. "Ha, Hunting Shadow, is it?" The Bamboo Hat Man's tone turned cold. "I'll count to 3. Leave the ancient glaze platform behind and scram." 3. The Bamboo Hat Man began counting down. Hunting Shadow laughed angrily. "I'll help you count. 1. The Bamboo Hat Man put down his finger, saying coldly, "Since you want to die, I'll grant your wish." Roar, 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 6 ferocious beast roars came from the Bamboo Hat Man's body. Hunting Shadow, who had been nonchalant, suddenly had a drastic change in expression. His expression was one of intense pain. "It's a soul attack." He was fearless because he was most proficient in soul attacks. No one could compete with him in terms of soul energy. Who knew that the other party was most proficient in soul attacks? How could Gui Yang and the other 2 be feeling any better? Their souls were in intense pain, and they had no fighting capacity. The Bamboo Hat Man said with disdain, "Hongxian, Chen Yu, what are you waiting for?" Hunting Shadow was a genius nurtured by the Sword Seeker Pavilion after all. After a short moment of pain, he immediately recovered and began his counterattack. Set up the formation. Gui Yang and the other 2 immediately accompanied Hunting Shadow, releasing 18 pitch-black small mirrors. The surface of the small mirrors was pitch-black, like 18 ancient wells, swallowing all the soul attacks that came their way. At the same time, Hunting Shadow shattered into countless shadow fragments, scattering all over the land. He circled the Bamboo Hat Man, looking for an opportunity to attack. Gui Yang and the other 2 attacked him head-on. It was as if they had gained the upper hand in the blink of an eye. The Bamboo Hat Man laughed coldly. "You overestimate yourself." Another violent roar. A blood-red beast soul came out from under the Bamboo Hat Man's straw cape, whistling. It opened its giant mouth and inhaled. A huge suction force no weaker than Su Yu's soul vortex swept across the area. A large number of shadow fragments were sucked away and chewed by the beast soul. A cry of pain could be heard. The remaining shadow fragments reformed into hunting shadow, looking at the bamboo hat man in fear. If you were good at something else, I might be afraid of you. But unfortunately, I specialize in restraining souls. The bamboo hat man's straw cape swelled, as if something was about to escape. The bamboo hat man's expression changed, saying hurriedly, "Retreat." Was there still a need to continue fighting after encountering someone who could restrain him? But the bamboo hat man had no intention of letting him leave. He said with a faint smile, "Didn't I say that I would grant you your wish if you wish to die? Isn't it too late to regret now? All of you shall remain as my nourishment." 6 beast souls flew out from under the bamboo hat man's straw cape. Hunting Shadow's expression changed drastically. A single beast soul had swallowed a considerable portion of his soul, let alone 6. He was a delicacy delivered to his doorstep. Roar! The 6 beast souls whistled toward them, about to swallow their souls. But at that moment, the 2 members of the Nine Swords cabinet behind Gui Ying convulsed, then exploded from the inside out. Blood splattered everywhere, condensing into the figure of an old man bathed in blood. Under the cover of the fresh blood, his eyes were exceptionally dark. He said, "Youngster, one should forgive and forget whenever possible. Why are you so stubborn?" The 6 beast souls pounced toward him. The man covered in blood merely extended a finger and flicked it, sending the 6 beast souls flying. The bamboo hat man's laughter froze as he stared at the man shrouded in blood before him. When the blood on his body slowly dripped down his face, revealing his true appearance, the bamboo hat man gasped. "Master of the sword-seeking pavilion, ghost teacher?" Princess Chen Yu, who was at the side, shuddered, her pretty eyes wide. How could you have entered the Glaze Ancient Cave? The Glaze Ancient Cave only allowed juniors to enter. How could a powerful martial artist like Ghost Teacher sneak in under the noses of her father and Guangming Yu? The heartless Iron Constable, who was hiding in the dark, was also surprised. The sword-seeking pavilion master had sneaked in, only Su Yu remained calm, not too surprised. When he saw Ghost Teacher in front of the Glaze Ancient Cave, he had felt that there was something wrong with him. But Xiao Lifeng and Guangming Yu did not say anything, so Su Yu pretended not to know. He never thought that the Ghost Teacher outside was a fake. The real Ghost Teacher had used some secret technique to hide in the bodies of the 2 members of the Nine Swords cabinet. And when necessary, he would sacrifice them to reveal his true self. Chapter 2345. The Ghost Master was really resourceful. Su Yu couldn't help but secretly admire his ability, as he had managed to sneak into the Glaze Ancient Cave without anyone knowing. It was no wonder that the 4 from the Nine Swords Pavilion were able to successfully reach the Earth Layer Glazed Ancient platform. Ghost Teacher must have secretly helped them along the way. "Little baby, I didn't want to make things difficult for you, but you don't know what's good for you and want to court death." Ghost Master's eyes were cold and murderous. He did not want Xiao Lifeng and Radiant Jade to find out that he had snuck into the Glazed Ancient Cave. Otherwise, those 2 fellows would definitely settle the score with him. Thus, he could only send the 2 of them on their way and kill them to silence them. Feeling the Ghost Teacher's killing intent, the bamboo hat man's heart shuddered. He shouted in a low voice, "Swordsmanship-seeking pavilion leader, think carefully before you act." With a swish, he threw out an antique tortoise shell. The tortoise shell was densely covered with many mysterious runes that seemed to be used for divination. Upon seeing this item, Ghost Master's pupils constricted. Old Man Profound Secrets item? In the Western region, there was no one who didn't know who Old Man Profound Secrets was. He was the supreme figure who ruled over the entire Western region's Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce. His cultivation was extremely high. When he had opened up the Star Alliance Chamber of Commerce in the Western region, he had challenged all the 9 great 7-star civilizations on his own. All the super experts had accepted his challenge, and in the end, he had not suffered a single defeat. Ghost Master could still remember the feeling of being as insignificant as a speck of dust in front of Old Man Profound Secrets. This feeling of extreme inferiority was something he had only felt from the old monsters of the Xiandao Palace. The turtle shell in the bamboo hat man's hand was the Old Man Profound Secrets divination tool, and it rarely left his side. Now that it had appeared in the hands of the man in bamboo hat, How could the Ghost Master not be afraid? Ghost Master's expression changed again and again. In the end, he did not dare to take the risk of offending Old Man Profound Secrets. He snorted and said, "Consider yourself lucky." Scram. The man in the bamboo hat glanced at the empty glaze platform and left with regret. After he left, Hunting Shadow said, "Master, why didn't you make them stay? The glazed ancient cave is isolated from the rest of the world. Even if I really killed him, Old Man Profound Secrets might not know." But Ghost Master shook his head, his face solemn. "You don't understand how terrifying Old Man Profound Secrets is. In all my life, he is the only person I know who can divine the secrets of the heavens. To be enemies with such a person, you must be prepared to lose your life." Divination? The higher one's cultivation base was, the more one would believe in such mysterious things. Hunting Shadow's scalp went numb. He could imagine that if they really killed the man in the bamboo hat, Old Man Profound Secrets might be able to divine it. Moreover, compared to chasing after them, retrieving the glazed ancient platform is naturally more important. The ghost teacher's face suddenly became gloomy. He turned his head and stared in the direction of Su Yu and the Wuxin Iron Arrester. "Isn't that so, the two of you?" The heartless Iron Constable's face was calm. He knew that he had been discovered. Su Yu, on the other hand, was as calm as an ancient well. He was not surprised at all. How difficult was it to hide in front of a super expert? When the ghost teacher appeared, Su Yu knew that he had been discovered. Sure, Su Yu and the heartless Iron Arrester had a tacit understanding, and they sped off into the distance at the same time. While galloping, the heartless Iron Constable also summoned the gold and silver horses. The two of them mounted their horses and left quickly. Although the appearance of the ghost teacher was extremely unexpected, Su Yu still successfully completed his plan and obtained the glazed ancient platform. Now it all depended on how to get rid of Ghost Master. Hiss, the gold and silver horses neighed and stepped into the space to escape. "Humph. So it's you." The ghost teacher saw that one of the two was Su Yu, and he was filled with hatred. How many times had this person spoiled his plans? Hunting Shadow also saw it clearly, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "I want to tear you into pieces." The person who had caused him to lose a third of his soul was this human named Su Yu. The ghost teacher waved his sleeves, sweeping up Hunting Shadow and the ghost eye in pursuit. It went without saying how fast a super expert's speed was. Space realm. Su Yu did not even turn his head, activating the space realm. At once, the space where the ghost teacher was constantly folding and folding. The ghost teacher broke through a layer of folded barriers, then fell into another layer of barriers. This repeated, making it seem like he was advancing rapidly, but in reality, he was still in the same place. Little B** starred. The ghost teacher felt that he was being played like a monkey by Su Yu. He was furious. "You dare to embarrass yourself with the middle-grade space realm everywhere?" With a low grunt, the ghost teacher's entire body was filled with ghost energy. Countless ghost shadows rushed out, gnawing at the space realm. This caused a flaw to appear in the space realm. The ghost teacher's nostrils flared. He took advantage of this flaw and broke through the space realm. "Chase after him." The murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Although he was dismissive of Su Yu's space realm, his heart was filled with awe. Su Yu's space realm should be at the entry level, not even at the beginner level. Even so, it still lasted a long time under the ghost teacher's middle-grade space realm. The space realm deserved its reputation, therefore, he was even more determined to kill Su Yu. This person's potential was too great. If he did not kill him today, he would kill him in the future. Moreover, he held the contract with the sword-seeking pavilion. How could he allow him to leave the Glaze ancient cave alive? Boom! The ghost teacher activated the space realm, which turned into a pair of giant wings behind him. With a flap of the wings, lightning flashed and thunder roared. His speed increased by more than 3 times. The distance that Su Yu had managed to widen with great difficulty was immediately caught up by the ghost teacher. Feeling the piercingly cold energy behind her, the heartless Iron Hunter looked calm. She turned her head and said, "Try controlling my treasure." She pinned her hopes on the golden Xuanwu. Suyu shook his head slightly. The golden Xuanwu was powerful, but it was supporting the evil crossing lotus at the moment and could not free itself. Not for the time being. I've prepared something for this old man. Suyu dropped an extremely cold needle from his sleeve. It was the 9-5 Heavens cold needle. He turned his head to look behind him, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. I wish you good luck, old thing. Swoosh. With a flick of his hand, the 9-5 Heavens cold needle flew out and shot toward the ghost teacher, who was galloping behind him. Although the ghost teacher was moving at a high speed, his reflexes were very agile. With a flap of his wings, he immediately dodged the 9-5 Heavens cold needle. He sneered coldly. If Xiao Lifeng used the 9-5 Heavens cold needle personally, I might have some fear, but you. Haha. The extreme cold within the 9-5 Heavens cold needle could seal the Fish Dragon Realm Master into ice shards on the spot. Even a super strong man like the ghost teacher would be slightly affected if he was hit by the needle. However, Suyu's cultivation was too low, and it would be difficult for the needle to harm him. Is that so? Suyu smiled lightly. The ghost teacher's heart thumped, and he realized that something was amiss. He saw that the 9-5 Heavens cold needle had clearly flown past him, but it twisted strangely and pierced into his arm. Space field. It turned out that Suyu had already used the space field to a very precise degree. At the same time that he shot out the 9-5 Heavens cold needle, he added a hint of the space field that was hard to detect. Under the effect of the space field, the 9-5 Heavens cold needle could twist at an incredible angle. The ghost teacher had nowhere to hide, and he could only operate a thick layer of the Pathmaster's strength on the surface of his body. With his strong physique, he should have been able to block it. However, his expression changed drastically when the whiff of the space field ignored his defense, allowing the 9-5 Heavens cold needle to pierce into his flesh without any resistance. All of a sudden, the ghost teacher let out a muffled groan. The air that came out of his groan was cold air. His skin began to turn pale and lose its color, and a thin layer of ice was continuously forming on the surface of his body. The 9-5 Heavens cold needle had begun to take effect. Master. Hunting Shadow's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly imbued the Pathmaster's strength into the ghost teacher to resist the cold air. However, as soon as he touched it, he himself began to be corroded by the cold air. Don't touch me, you can't do anything to the cold air of the 9-5 Heavens cold needle. Just protect me. The ghost teacher was in a difficult situation, and he could no longer speak fluently. Hunting Shadow was filled with grief and anger. He ordered, Ghost Eye, you take the back, I'll take the front. The two of them sandwiched the ghost teacher in the middle, keeping their guard up against Suyu. Wuxin Tai Constable reined in the horse's reins, a thoughtful look in her eyes. Do you still have any tricks up your sleeves? If not, then he had to take this opportunity to escape. Of course I do. Suyu took out the 9-jade spiritual pearl. There was an eye on it, and an imperceptible bolt of lightning was swimming in the eye. That was the remnant lightning arc of the Yuan level field. Once it struck the ghost teacher, he would be crippled even if he did not die. Of course, Suyu did not use it immediately. Instead, he concealed the existence of the lightning arc without batting an eyelid. He pulled out the royal scepter dragon sword and said, You keep Hunting Shadow occupied. Leave the ghost teacher to me. Wuxin Tai Constable nodded, turned her horse around, and charged back. She raised her hand and launched an attack on Hunting Shadow. Her abilities had always been strong and famous. Hunting Shadow did not dare underestimate her. He clenched his teeth and fought with all his might. Suyu attacked the ghost teacher. Ghost Eye shouted, Do not touch the pavilion master. As he spoke, he pounced toward Suyu without fear of death. Suyu did not even look at him. He sent him flying with a kick and slashed at the ghost teacher's head from top to bottom with his sword. He activated the heavenly dragon body, exerting his strength to the extreme. The ghost teacher's entire body was frozen. It was impossible for him to defend against this sword with the hardness of his body alone. This sword would definitely take away half of his life, or even kill him directly. Creak, the royal scepter dragon sword drew a long trail of sparks in the air. It slashed at the ghost teacher in a beautiful arc. Ghost Eye and Hunting Shadow's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, but they could not help. They could only watch as the ghost teacher was sliced into two. Wuxin Tai Constable also had a surreal feeling. One of the three great superfighters of the Colored Glaze civilization had died just like that. But, just as the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword was about to slash at his neck, the ghost teacher, who was clearly frozen and unable to move, raised his right hand like lightning. His middle and index fingers clamped down on the blade of the Royal Scepter Dragon Sword with great force and precision. No matter how much strength Su Yu exerted, he could not hold down those two fingers. Su Yu's expression changed greatly. You were pretending to be injured? He looked at the ghost teacher's face again. Indeed, there was no longer any pain. The ice on his body melted continuously, and his face quickly regained its color. Chapter 2346. If he really did not have any way to deal with the 9-5 Heaven's cold needle, he would have been chased by Xiao Lifeng to the ends of the earth. He had pretended to be injured to lure Su Yu over. Otherwise, if this continued, when would it ever end? In the end, Su Yu had underestimated the true power of a super-strong martial artist. The heartless Iron Constable's heart thumped. Leave quickly. She forced Hunting Shadow back, rushing over. Hunting Shadow was overjoyed, laughing maniacally. Leave. Did you ask for our permission? He transformed into millions of shadow fragments, rushing over to block the heartless Iron Constable's path. The heartless Iron Constable was anxious, but she had no choice but to resist Hunting Shadow. The ghost teacher laughed coldly. He stared at Su Yu's eyes and said, "Say goodbye to this world." He clamped the royal dragon sword with one hand, and extended a finger with the other, pointing it at Su Yu's chest. This was the attack of a super-strong martial artist. With Su Yu's current physique, he would undoubtedly die. But at that moment, Su Yu's lips curled up again. "I'll return the same words to you," he said indifferently. He loosened his fist, revealing the 9-jade spiritual pearl, revealing a shred of the Yuan-level domain within. The domain had just appeared, but it released a terrifying power that could destroy the Milky Way and the universe. The Ghost Master shuddered, his pupils constricting to the size of a needle. This is the Yuan-level domain from a few months ago? Correct. Su Yu clenched his fist, activating the desolate energy in his body and activating the 9-jade spiritual pearl. The eyes of the 9-jade spiritual pearl flickered, and the Yuan-level domain within flew out like a dragon emerging from the sea, entering the Ghost Master's body. Bang! With a loud bang, the Ghost Master was blasted into pieces by the Yuan-level domain from the inside out. He turned into ghost mist, scattering everywhere. Everything happened so suddenly that Hunting Shadow and the heartless Iron Constable had no time to react. Su Yu had been tricked, so why was the Ghost Master the one who died? Su Yu stared at the fragments on the ground, his expression calm. He had always been meticulous, and had never expected the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle to kill a super-strong martial artist. His real trump card was this Yuan-level domain. The reason why he used the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle was to divert the Ghost Master's attention and find an opportunity to launch the 9-5 Heaven's Cold Needle to deal a fatal blow. Unexpectedly, the ghost teacher pretended to be seriously injured to lure Su Yu closer. He was practically inviting Su Yu to stab him with his sword. Then why was Su Yu being so courteous? Of course, he would go with the flow and deliver a fatal blow at close range. Master. Hunting Shadow couldn't believe it. A moment later, his eyes widened and he pounced over with a roar. Ghost Eye also went forward in a panic to check on Ghost Teacher. Su Yu frowned slightly. Why did the two of them not seem to think that the Ghost Teacher was dead? At this moment, the broken pieces of Ghost Master squirmed and reassembled into a complete Ghost Master. Su Yu's eyes became gloomy. A top-notch Pathmaster who had surpassed the Fish Dragon realm was really not easy to kill. His body had been shattered to this extent, but he could still be reborn immediately. No wonder he could merge with the bodies of the two disciples and successfully sneak into the glazed ancient cave. Just as Su Yu was about to think of another way, a muffled sound of thunder suddenly came from within the ghost teacher's body, causing it to explode into pieces. It turned out that the remnant power of the Yuan-level realm had not dissipated and was still lingering in the body. The shattered ghost teacher tried to fuse again, only to be blasted into pieces again. This repeated, and the speed of the ghost teacher's fusion became slower and slower. After the final fusion, the ghost teacher could no longer care about Suyu. He grabbed Ghost Eye and Hunting Shadow and fled in a panic. Before he left, he angrily shouted, "Little B****, just you wait." Bang! Another loud noise blasted the ghost teacher into pieces. But the moment before the explosion, the ghost teacher used some secret technique and instantly disappeared without a trace. The heartless Iron Constable immediately rode the gold and silver horses to search for him. She said helplessly, "His scent has also been erased. There's no way to chase after him." As she spoke, she sized up Suyu with surprise and suspicion. She did not expect that not only did Suyu not die in the Yuan level realm, but he had even refined a shred of it. And he had endured it until now, not using it. Previously, Suyu had been chased by that wild wolf, but he had never used this item. Until today, when he had used it at the most appropriate time. "Fortunately, I have never been your enemy," the heartless Iron Constable said. Suyu smiled calmly. "Me too." Disregarding everything else, just the heartless Iron Constable's golden Xuanwu alone was enough to give him a headache. The two of them were talking about something when suddenly the gold and silver horses neighed for no reason. Their hooves moved restlessly, looking exceptionally frightened. Suyu rolled his eyes and said, "Let's leave this place quickly." The appearance of the Yuan-level realm just now had caused a commotion that would have alarmed half of the earthly realm. Something might have been attracted here. The heartless Iron Constable also sensed that something was amiss. She leaped onto the gold and silver horses and pulled Suyu into the space immediately. Unexpectedly, as soon as they entered, they suddenly felt the space tremble violently. It was like an earthquake. The entire space was completely shattered, and there were space reversals everywhere. The gold and silver horses had no choice but to burrow back through a broken space to avoid being swallowed by the space reversals. The place where they appeared was only 100 million miles away from the place where they had just fought. Looking at the place where they had fought, the two of them sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw a two-headed lion slamming its gigantic claws against the battlefield, smashing all the space there into pieces. Judging from the ferocious aura released by the lion, it was no less than that of the ghost teacher. Suyu's heart trembled. It had actually attracted the king of 10,000 beasts of the earthly realm. Its cultivation had reached the ranks of the super strong. Suyu and the heartless Iron Constable calmly concealed their auras and moved stealthily in the forest. However, they had only taken a few steps when the violent smashing sound behind them suddenly subsided. At the same time, the top of their heads suddenly darkened. Looking up, two mountain-sized eyes stared at the two of them without blinking. From the lion's mouth, saliva flowed like a waterfall, drenching the two of them. Suyu's scalp went numb, and he immediately grasped the 9-jade spiritual pearl. He could only make the golden Xuanwu give up the glazed ancient platform and use the aura of the king of 10,000 beasts to scare the lion away. However, the lion had no intention of attacking. Instead, it crouched down. Its head was lowered, lying in front of the two of them, groaning and groaning from its nostrils. Suyu and the heartless Iron Constable both sensed that something was amiss. They flew into the air to take a look, only to see a demon-subduing pestle inserted into the lion's neck. The pestle was constantly releasing an unusually cold energy, causing the lion great pain. "It must be begging us to help it remove the demon-subduing pestle, right?" The heartless Iron Constable understood. The pestle contained the power of the martial path, and could not be removed by brute force alone. The lion must have suffered for a long time and could not be removed for a long time. When it sensed that there were martial artists fighting, it came over to seek help. "You decide," the heartless Iron Constable said. The lions in the glazed ancient cave were, after all, wild beasts that had yet to develop spiritual intelligence. If they helped it remove the demon-subduing pestle, it was hard to say whether it would bite back. Suyu pondered for a moment, then flew down and grabbed the 1,000-foot-long demon-subduing pestle. He imbued it with the power of desolation, pulled it out with force, and successfully removed it. Roar! All of a sudden, the lion roared in pain, and black blood spurted from its neck. Suyu flew back to the heartless Iron Constable's side, secretly guarding against the lion's next move. Fortunately, the lion did not attack as he had imagined. Instead, it growled at Suyu and the heartless Iron Constable, and shook its shoulders. "It wants us to go up," the heartless Iron Constable asked uncertainly. Suyu said, "Let's go up first." At least the lion did not have any malicious intentions, and following it would be safer. After the two of them jumped up, the lion got up and strode toward the border of the Earth realm. There, an incomparably wide river lay in front of them, with no end in sight. Connecting the two sides of the river was an extraordinarily long bridge. Standing on the other side of the bridge, one could occasionally see enormous beasts with terrifying auras walking in the fog on the other side of the river. Without a doubt, the other side of the bridge was the most mysterious heaven realm, a place where even the weakest of the beasts were super strong. There was even a king of beasts that was superior to the super strong. "Why did you bring us here?" Suyu tried to ask. Although the lion did not understand what Suyu was talking about, it could roughly understand his doubts. It raised a paw and pointed at the center of the bridge. There was a vague fog in the center of the bridge. Suyu looked carefully and vaguely found several extraordinarily tall creatures in the fog. They were sitting cross-legged and training there. "There are other people in the Glaze ancient cave." Suyu thought of the demon-subduing pestle that was stabbed into the lion's neck. Among the people who entered from the three great influences of the Glaze civilization, none of them used a demon-subduing pestle as a treasure. Moreover, Xianhua and the others had stayed in the Earth realm. The plaited bamboo hat man and the other two escaped. The Ghost Master and the other two also escaped. Then, who were the people on the bridge? Was there another entrance to the Glaze ancient cave? Right at this moment, the tallest person on the bridge stood up, looked over from the fog, and scolded, "What a bold beast! How dare you come here and disturb our training?" That voice was so forceful that Suyu felt like it was deafening even from half a bridge away. His body was in turmoil. Looking at the heartless Iron Constable, his breath was in a mess, and he was trying to adjust his state of mind. Suyu was extremely shocked. A single sentence from a distance was enough to make the two of them feel uncomfortable. What kind of cultivation was this? The Glaze divine realm is not for beasts to enter. "Leave quickly," the tall figure shouted again. The lion roared unwillingly, but it did not dare to confront him. It whimpered and left with its head lowered. Obviously, the demon-subduing pestle on its neck was done by the tall figure. After watching the lion leave, the tall figure returned to the center of the bridge and continued to train with his legs crossed. However, Suyu and the Wuxin Iron Constable were deeply shocked. What did the Glaze divine realm mean? How did those people enter the Glaze ancient cave? Their minds were full of questions. The Wuxin Iron Constable pondered for a long time. Her eyes flickered slightly, showing her inner turmoil. She looked at Suyu and said, "Who do you think they are?" Suyu murmured, "Haven't you already guessed it?" The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Chapter 2347. Wuxin Tai Constable's calm face was covered with a layer of surprise. He said slowly, "I think they are the indigenous people born in the heavenly layer." Suyu nodded, but he shook his head in his heart. To be precise, they should be the living creatures that survived from the previous era. The nightmare-crossing lotus throne that the unparalleled Emperor Master, the Absolute Saint, had painstakingly built was not a complete failure. At least a few people had survived and had been hiding in the heavenly layer all this time. Suyu could not help but wonder how many people had survived from the previous era. There were more than 3 nightmare-crossing lotus thrones. There were other nightmare-crossing lotus thrones, but he did not know where they were. Did the nightmare-crossing lotus thrones successfully protect those powerful beings? Moreover, half of the powerful beings did not choose the nightmare-crossing lotus thrones back then. Instead, they used other methods to survive the great calamity of the world. If they were still alive, where were they now, and what were they planning to do? As he pondered, the demon-subduing pestle in his hand suddenly trembled and slipped out of his hand. Suyu subconsciously grabbed it and caught it. A soft sound of surprise came from the bridge. "That's strange. That beast seems to have something on it that is preventing the demon-subduing pestle from returning." It turned out to be a tall figure on the bridge preparing to retrieve the demon-subduing pestle. Wait, that lion seems to have the aura of a martial artist. No, it's the aura of the dragon race, a tall figure said in surprise. Really? Another tall figure stood up abruptly. At that moment, the tallest figure among them stood up. His eyes were filled with ecstasy as he laughed heartily. It's the will of the heavens. We were about to give up, but a dragon came to us. Hearing their words, Su Yu's heart thumped. He had a very bad feeling about this. The dragon race they were talking about should be him, right? Crack. The three of them walked toward the shore. With every step they took, terrifying heavenly thunder and earthly fire descended, as if they were obstructing them from reaching the shore of the heavenly layer. However, they completely ignored it and continued to press forward. The clouds and mist on the bridge flowed rapidly, turning into bursts of white mist that rushed into the heavenly layer. Wherever the white mist passed, all the trees and flowers withered and died, losing their vitality. After confirming that they had come for him, Su Yu's expression changed. He shoved the 9-jade spiritual pearl into Wu Xin Tai Constable's hands and shouted, "Take it and get away from me quickly." The other party had come for him, and having Heartless Iron Constable by his side would only increase the danger. "Are they doing this for you?" The Heartless Iron Arrester immediately understood Su Yu's intentions. He was trying to protect her. He even entrusted such an important 9-jade spiritual pearl to her. "Hurry up." Su Yu's voice was grave. The three of them could very well be unparalleled almighties from the previous era. They were the mighty masters of the world. Once they descended, Su Yu would not be able to resist them at all. With Heartless Iron Constable by his side, he would only suffer undeserved disasters. He might as well give her the most important 9-jade spiritual pearl. If he was still alive, he would naturally look for the Heartless Iron Constable to get it back. If she died, the 9-jade spiritual pearl would lose its master and open automatically. She would be able to retrieve the golden Xuanwu. The Heartless Iron Constable bit her red lips. She looked at the three figures that were walking over step by step, causing one to feel suffocated. She clenched her teeth and said, "Do you have anything to say?" If those three people had really come for Su Yu, he would most likely die. So, she was asking for Su Yu's last words. As a constable, she had seen too many of her fellow constables fall before her eyes. The Heartless Iron Constable was already numb to their deaths. But the eternal parting with Su Yu made her feel an inexplicable pain in her heart. Say something. Many people flashed through Su Yu's mind. Finally, his mind fixed on the image of Qin Xiana. His eyes were filled with regret. Qin Xiana had forgotten about him and everything that had happened between them. She only remembered his name. That was all. If I meet someone named Qin Xiana. Su Yu wanted to say something, but Qin Xiana was still in the distant Azura civilization. It would take 1,000 years to get there. So what if he said something? "It's fine. You can go." Su Yu waved his hand desolately. The Heartless Iron Constable slowly closed her eyes. She murmured the three words Qin Xiana in her heart. She nodded and said, "Come back alive." She knew that the chances of Su Yu coming back alive were very slim. Touching the left side of her chest, the Heartless Iron Constable leaped onto the gold and silver horse and left alone. She knew that she was powerless with her current strength. All she could do was carry out his last words. Even though they were Su Yu's unfinished last words. The lion seemed to have sensed the abnormality of the three tall figures. It was so frightened that it immediately ran away. Not long after it ran away, a violent thunderclap came from behind. Su Yu looked back. At the end of the world, dense thunderbolts crisscrossed and fell with a loud rumble, bombarding the three tall figures. However, the three figures were not afraid. They finally stepped onto the earth layer from the magnificent bridge. The moment their feet touched the earth layer, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. The weather changed. Many spiritual veins dried up in an instant. Countless plants lost their vitality. The spiritual energy in the world disappeared. The earth layer, which had been full of vitality before, became a barren, abandoned land in the blink of an eye. As for the three figures, they had not done anything at all. They had merely stepped on it with one foot. Annoying rules. The figure on the left looked up at the increasingly turbulent thunderbolts. He opened his mouth wide and swallowed all the thunderbolts that filled the sky. The strength of the thunderbolts was second only to the wisp of Yuan realm. The figure on the right was a little helpless. If it is not necessary, I really do not want to step onto the earth layer. Once we come, the earth layer will be destroyed. They were so powerful that the earth layer could not accommodate their existence at all. It was like a vessel that was forcibly stuffed with something much larger than itself. The consequence was that the vessel would be destroyed. He took a step forward. All of a sudden, layers of raging flames emerged from the ground, burning everything from the ground to the ground. Countless fish-dragon realm beasts could not resist the raging flames at all. They were all burned to ashes alive. Only the lion seemed to be deliberately protected. There was not a single trace of flame within 1,000 feet of it. The figure in the middle looked at the lion indifferently. To be exact, he was looking at the person on top of it. With just one look, Suyu spat out a mouthful of blood with a cry. His heavenly dragon body was like a piece of paper, its insides completely shattered. Too weak. The figure in the middle shook his head in disappointment. However, there is indeed the bloodline of the dragon clan, although it is not pure. Suyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the destroyed earth layer, his heart became extremely heavy. The strength of these three people was no weaker than the second clone of Prince Xiaoyao. Follow us, the figure in the middle said expressionlessly. Suyu hesitated. If he resisted with all his might, he would only die. He would not be able to harm even a hair of theirs. If he followed them, he could still act according to the circumstances. The figure on the right said indifferently, "Little ant, how hard can it be to take your life? Follow us, and after we succeed, we will give you supreme luck." Suyu was calm. He jumped off the lion and walked towards them. The figure on the left shook his huge grey robe, shielding Suyu under it. Then, he turned and stepped onto the nameless bridge. The moment he stepped onto the bridge, endless heavenly thunder came crashing down. Every bolt of lightning had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was extremely terrifying. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. If he had been alone, he might not have been able to withstand all of them. With the protection of the grey-robed man, Suyu was safe and sound until he reached the center of the bridge. Standing in the middle of the bridge, Suyu could feel the intensity of the aura released by the nightmare-crossing lotus. It was incomparably intense. It was at least 100 times stronger than the one in the human layer. No wonder the three of them wanted to train in the middle of the bridge. The third nightmare-crossing lotus must be near the bridge, right? Insect ancestor, take out that thing. The figure in the middle addressed the figure on the left as the insect ancestor. The so-called ancestor was the supreme existence of a certain race. For example, the human ancestor. He was an absolute existence that destroyed 2 Saint Mountain heavenly suns with his own strength. This person was called the human ancestor. Even if he was not the human ancestor, he was definitely a great ruler of the previous era. The bone ancestor only knows how to order people around. Hey. The insect ancestor laughed dryly with dissatisfaction and grabbed the river from a distance. Crash. The whole river suddenly turned upside down and split into two from the middle, revealing an extremely deep riverbed. The riverbed was filled with the bones of various wild beasts. It should be the bones of the wild beasts that had died in the river for many years. But the most conspicuous one was an incomparably huge dragon skeleton. It was lying at the bottom of the riverbed. Its entire skeleton was a dreamy 9-colored crystal color, flickering with extremely bright light. This was the bone of the dragon clan. But the color of the skeleton, he had seen the remains of the dragon emperor before, and its whole body was golden. The 9-colored crystal dragon skeleton in front of him was really something he had never seen before. Sigh, it's a pity that the ancestral dragon was one of the 9 great divine ancestors back then. The insect ancestor sighed with regret. The bone ancestor was expressionless. It should be said that because the 3 of us did not enter the ranks of the 9 great divine ancestors, we were ignored by the Saint Mountain and escaped this calamity. The 2 of them reminisced about the past. The figure on the far right said indifferently, "The 2 of you, business is more important. Whether we can survive this new calamity depends on whether the thing in the ancestral dragon's body can be activated. The insect ancestor glanced at him. Since the snake ancestor is so concerned, why don't you do it? The person on the right was the snake ancestor. Dragons and snakes had something in common. Once the thing in the ancestral dragon's body was taken out, the one most likely to control it was the snake ancestor. However, the ancestral dragon was known as one of the 9 great divine ancestors of the previous era. His remains were still filled with dangers that they did not dare to underestimate. Hence, no one wanted to act rashly. The 3 old ancestor-level masters looked at each other. Finally, they reached a tacit understanding and looked at Su Yu. Junior, the 3 of us have decided that you will go into the ancestral dragon's body to take out an item. Su Yu cursed in his heart. If even the 3 old ancestor-level masters did not want to go, wouldn't it be courting death for him to go? Seniors, my strength is weak. I'm afraid I can't take on your request. Su Yu cupped his fists. The insect ancestor smiled faintly. You are indeed too weak. Hence, we will not let you die in vain. As he spoke, he extended a finger towards Su Yu. A milky white little worm came out of his finger and landed on Su Yu's shoulder. This thing is called the Tribulation Spiritual Worm. It can devour all attacks that are not higher than my realm. Hold it well. Chapter 2348. Su Yu didn't know how high the realm of the insect ancestor was. However, it was definitely not higher than the ancestor. This is a snake gallbladder. After swallowing it, it can cure all injuries, including the injuries of the heavenly law. The snake ancestor took out a pale green snake gallbladder and handed it to Su Yu. Injuries of the heavenly law. Su Yu's heart moved and he asked, is it effective for those whose memories have been erased by the heavenly law? He thought of Qin Xiana. Was having her memory erased also considered a trauma? The snake ancestor said lightly, it is effective, but it is not obvious. Even so, Su Yu still felt happy. Even if there was only a little effect, Su Yu was extremely satisfied. The last was the bone ancestor. He took out a broken grey bone and said, this bone contains a trace of my divine power. I hope it can be used at critical moments. Su Yu took it, and the skin of his palm immediately began to rot. The deep burning pain stimulated his nerves, forcing Su Yu to release the dragon scales to isolate the corrosion on his bones. Seeing the dragon scales appearing on his arms, the pupils of the 3 ancestors changed, revealing a touch of excitement and expectation. Go! The snake ancestor was a little impatient and urged. Su Yu had no choice but to go to the remains of the ancestor and try. It was a very dangerous trip, and he would most likely die. However, if he didn't go, he would die immediately. He secretly gritted his teeth. He would remember this debt for the time being. If he had a chance to retaliate, he would definitely let them taste the bitterness. I still don't know what the 3 elders want me to find. Su Yu asked. The bone ancestor took out a dull pearl. You have this pearl with you. When you get close to that thing, it will emit a dazzling red light. Is that so? Understood. Su Yu jumped off the bridge. The bottom of the river didn't seem very high, but Su Yu jumped and found that he couldn't reach the bottom. The higher he fell, the deeper the bottom of the river became. However, in the eyes of the 3 ancestors on the bridge, Su Yu's figure became smaller and smaller after jumping down, and finally disappeared like a sesame seed. After waiting for an era, a person with the bloodline of the dragon clan has finally come. The snake ancestor sighed. We can take back the will left by the human weight and the earth weight. The insect ancestor slightly raised his head and inhaled towards the sky. In the human weight far away, a wild wolf coiled in a cave suddenly twisted its body in pain. From the corner of his eye, a moth flew out and quickly flew towards the sky character. There were also many other wild beasts that had worms flying out of their bodies after suffering for a while. It turned out that the reason why Su Yu had been relentlessly pursued by the wild wolf was because Su Yu's unique dragon aura had attracted the attention of the moth in the wild wolf's body. Su Yu had thought that it was strange. As food, he should not have been chased by the wild wolf to such an extent. But now, the truth was out. Because the 3rd ancestor was too powerful, It was inconvenient for her to personally go and capture the intruders of the dragon clan. Therefore, they could only rely on the humanoid beasts to help them find it. I wonder if he can successfully obtain that thing. Insect Ancestor kept his insects and stared at that long ancestral dragon bone with a nervous heart. Ancestor Bone said coldly, "You have to succeed whether you succeed or not. The destruction of a new era is about to begin, but we are trapped here, unable to leave. Only by obtaining the item will we have the chance to leave." Snake Ancestor and Insect Ancestor suddenly felt a sense of urgency. A trace of cold hostility appeared on Snake Ancestor's face. "When I get out, the first person I want to kill is that old thing Lu Ancestor. If not for his scheme, we would have left this place on the day of the restart of the era." Insect Ancestor was also extremely resentful. "The day we break the seal is the day he dies." Listening to his tone, it seemed that they were trapped here not by choice. Instead, they were set up by a companion who was also an ancestor. Ancestor Bone said indifferently, "All right, let's prepare for the sacrificial refining first. It will take a few years for the sacrificial refining to be complete." At that time, after 3 days, Suyu finally landed on the skeleton successfully. Looking from the bridge, the ancestral dragon skeleton was only 1,000,000 feet in size. But when he landed on its body, he found that its body was as big as a continent. He couldn't see the end of it at all. The thing that the third ancestor mentioned did not have a specific location. He could only sense it with the pearl in his chest. In desperation, Suyu could only wander around on foot to look for it. He tried to take a step forward. Unexpectedly, an extremely hot purple-black flame appeared under his feet. Dragon's breath. Suyu's heart skipped a beat and he immediately rose into the air. At the place where he stood, the air was burned by the dragon's breath. The soles of Suyu's feet were also swept by the dragon's breath, and serious burns appeared. It was hard to imagine what would happen if Suyu did not react in time and was engulfed by the dragon's breath. Even walking is so difficult. Suyu's heart sank. But the difficulty was just the beginning. He tried to fly, but found that the atmosphere here was abnormally solid. His flying speed was as slow as a snail. With such a huge dragon skeleton and such a speed, it would be impossible to search for it in a few years' time. He had to find a way. Suyu thought for a while. Suddenly, his heart moved. He stimulated the dragon bloodline in his body, causing him to transform into a half-dragon body. All of a sudden, Suyu felt the air around him relax. It was as if the shackles on his body had been removed. As expected, Suyu murmured. The space around the dragon skeleton was sealed. It should be the will of the ancestral dragon left behind to prevent others from invading. Only the bloodline of the dragon could move freely. When he landed, there was no more dragon's breath on the ground. Taking a light breath, Suyu searched for that thing with his movement technique. 1 month later, he walked through most of the dragon's body and finally came to the area near the dragon's neck. A few days ago, the pearl in his arms began to heat up and emit a faint red light. So Suyu slowed down and searched around. At this moment, he was standing in front of a huge, bottomless pit. The pearl in his arms was emitting a dazzling red light. Obviously, it was very close to the thing that the third ancestor had mentioned. This should be the place where the ancestral dragon's heart is located, right? Looking at the huge pit that the man had created, Suyu felt like he was seeing the destruction of the previous era. The Saint Mountain Emperor had pierced through the ancestral dragon's back and destroyed his heart. Sighing softly, Suyu leaped into the pit. Could it be that the third ancestor had asked Suyu to find the dragon's heart? But the dragon's heart should have been destroyed by the Saint Mountain Emperor long ago. As he continued to enter the pit, Suyu felt the remnants of the world-destroying power in the deep pit. Even after an era, it still had not dissipated. The deeper he went, the more terrifying the world-destroying power became. When he reached the bottom, a broken dragon heart came into view. Within the dragon heart, the world-destroying power was everywhere. They were like living creatures, swimming around the broken dragon heart. Suyu's arrival alarmed them, and they all rushed over. His face changed, and he immediately took out the little worm on his shoulder. The little worm opened its mouth and sucked in, swallowing the world-destroying power that was attacking him. However, the little worm itself was exhausted. Suyu was secretly shocked. The insect ancestor had said that this worm could swallow all attacks that were not stronger than him. The behavior of the little worm was enough to show that the seemingly ordinary attacks just now were absolutely fatal. Swish, swish. The world-destroying power here was innumerable. The few that were swallowed did not harm the root, but instead completely enraged the world-destroying power, which shot out like arrows. The little worm hurriedly opened its mouth and swallowed 10 of them in a row. Finally, it missed one, and it hit its waist. Puff. The little worm was immediately turned into ashes. Suyu's face changed. He took out the bone that the bone ancestor had given him and slapped it towards the world-destroying power that was attacking him, breaking it apart. However, a deep burn mark was left on the bone. Swish, swish. More and more world-destroying power came, and it seemed that it would not stop until Suyu was destroyed. Suyu's heart was heavy. No wonder the third ancestor did not dare to come here easily. This place was really dangerous. Looking at the heart that was close at hand, and then looking at the world-destroying power that was surging towards him, Suyu gritted his teeth and shouted, "Space transfer." He used the space domain to replace the dragon heart with the space of the outside world. In an instant, the dragon heart appeared beside Suyu's hand. Without hesitation, he grabbed the palace-sized dragon heart and rushed out of the deep pit. The world-destroying power chased after him, and quickly caught up with Suyu, pouncing towards him like a violent storm. Suyu's face was solemn. He pulled out the royal dragon sword and swept it across. His original intention was to stop the world-destroying power. Unexpectedly, as soon as the sword was drawn, the whole body of the dragon began to shake. A dragon's breath that was tens of thousands of feet high emerged from the dragon's body, instantly swallowing everything on the dragon's body. The world-destroying might immediately disappeared without a trace. Only the 100 jong radius around Suyu was safe and sound. Suyu was startled. The ferocity of the dragon's breath just now was probably enough to severely injure or even kill one of the 3 ancestors. This was the real reason why they did not dare to step into the ancestral dragon's body. He stared at the royal dragon sword in his hand. It seemed like this sword had caused the ancestral dragon's remains to tremble. As an inherited treasure of the dragon clan, does the royal dragon sword have anything to do with the ancestral dragon? While he was deep in thought, the damaged dragon heart in his hand suddenly trembled violently before disintegrating inch by inch. Back then, it suffered a destructive attack, and after the Great Era passed, it was corroded by the world-destroying might, long reaching its limit. Now that it had been shaken, it was finally unable to maintain its form and collapsed. Suyu was stunned. Is this what the third ancestor wants? Since it was already destroyed, what was the use of it? However, Suyu quickly realized that something was amiss. What is that? Suyu asked. Among the shattered pieces on the ground, Suyu could faintly see an emerald color. With a wave of his sleeves, Suyu swept away the fragments, revealing the full appearance of the jade object. It was a pair of jade wings the size of a palm. The carvings were exquisite and lifelike. Suyu tried to pick it up. The pearl in his arms was emitting an unusually bright light, as if it was about to ignite. This was what the third ancestor wanted. When he touched it, Suyu was surprised to find that the jade wings were very soft and warm, similar to a human's body temperature. Holding it in his hand, it was like holding a ball of fresh life. What is this thing? Suyu did not remember the dragon clan having wings. Moreover, the ancestral dragon had protected it in its most important part, the heart.